This is the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's Thursday, December 19th at 6 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. I'd like all the ZBA members to introduce themselves. Sorry, I can start with this individually.
Deborah Burrows.
Matthew McBean. Bob
Lehman.
Andrew Orr.
Scott Court.
Okay. We do have a quorum. We have a full board, which is new to us. As everyone, you both have signed in, you're the only audience, so the purpose of this meeting is to review the undue hardship variance appeal for Mark and Gail Belanger of 185 West Shore Road, map 34, lot 10A. The jurisdiction in this matter is given to the ZBA by authority of the Waterboro Ordinance, Article 2, Section 204. Has correspondence been received by the Code and Planning Office at this time?
Yes, you guys received the memo that came from Jeff Carroll of the Maine DEP.
Yes, we all have that. It wasn't full, though. It's just the letter. It didn't have the permit by rule in it.
Okay, I can go print that out.
I don't think we need
There
it.
is excuse me, I don't think there's been a permit by rule for this particular application
Not
yet.
for
It's
this
still
one.
For the
For
previous.
the previous.
Yeah.
Back in 2000,
Did you get the permit by rule?
Yeah, it says 63417.
You can attach it to the letter.
I got it, because I got an email when I printed it, but. Okay. So we're gonna wait for Angela to come back. Before we go to that, do we have minutes? We don't have minutes of the last meeting because we didn't have a last meeting. We don't have any old business. New business, we need to elect a vice chair. In case I'm not here, we currently don't have a vice chair for this committee, so between the five of us, we need a vice chair. So, is anyone interested in that position? Please.
Look, you gotta see her, now you wanna take it.
It's only if I'm not here. You sit here, you do like I'm doing and read through the notes.
Well, she's new. We'll go with her.
Right into the fire.
It's up to you guys. We do need a vice chair, though.
Draw straws. Rock, paper, scissors. Another approach, Mr. Chair, would be to nominate someone and then have
I would nominate you.
the board vote.
I'll second that.
Everybody vote.
You're in.
Unanimously, guess what? Congratulations.
Your full name?
Matthew. MC.
Ian?
You do have a hard to find house.
And now we will wait for Angela to get back.
Those are printing right now, so if you'd like to move forward, if you can.
Yep, we can. I didn't know if Angela wanted to be here for the whole thing, so, okay. Mark, would you guys like to take the podium and explain your appeal?
Mr. Chair, before we get started, I understand that you will be recusing yourself, is that right?
I will be recusing
Yeah.
myself from voting.
Right, okay, so the way that it works is that you,
state
under
that
the
now.
law, is that you need to recuse yourself at the start of an agenda item. You're
Okay.
not permitted to, under the law, to take part in the consideration or discussion or voting of a matter.
If I'm recusing, do I go over there and talk?
You do sit in the audience, and then the vice chair would take over for this agenda item. So you're obviously, you
I knew that
know,
was coming, that's why I voted.
the two items on the agenda were the election of the chair, which obviously you're permitted to take part in that voting, But when it comes to an item that you are conflicted out of because of your status as an abutter, you're not permitted to take part in the discussion or, back and forth on that. You essentially would become a member of the audience, and you can, sit in the audience, stay, leave if you want, whatever. Yeah, but that's
No, I'll be
how.
sitting in the audience.
Okay, so that's how, and then the vice chair would take over for the running of it, and I'm happy to sort of guide you through as we go through it, yeah.
Can he participate as a member of the audience?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, he's essentially a member of the public once he's off of the dais, but that's the thing, is sort of, while he's up there, he's a board member, down here, a member of the public, so.
Makes perfect sense.
So, that's how it works, so. That's why, if you want to disclose the conflict of interest that you have and so forth.
So at this point, everyone needs to know that I do have a conflict of interest. Mark Belanger is my next door neighbor, and part of the issue with this property is one of the hard surfaces that are preventing him from everything he wants to do is my driveway. So I am definitely
Yep.
need to recuse myself.
That would be the
from this.
definition of a conflict of interest.
So at this
Textbook
point,
case.
at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you and Matt.
Did you sell the lot too?
No, I didn't. I'll turn this over to you, and I will move to the audience.
All right.
Congratulations.
So you now get the gavel, Matt. You have the gavel in your power. So just real briefly, I think just the way that I would advise, sort of conducting the order of operations would be as the chair previously mentioned, the applicant would have a chance to present the application for a variance. It would then be open for a public hearing on that to allow public comment for anyone in the audience who's here. Obviously, the board can ask questions of the applicant during the presentation that he's about to make, ask questions as to the 4 variance criteria, that kind of thing. And then the public gets to speak on the item, offer their input. If anyone from DEP is here, they can offer their input, but I will note for the record that memo from Jeff Kalinich by ordinance it becomes part of the record automatically once it's submitted to the town. But certainly if somebody from that office is here tonight, they could be heard as well. And then if there's any other comments, either from the code enforcement officer or anyone else, but I'm here as a resource for the board. I'm representing the board tonight. This is not an appeal of any decision of the code enforcement officer, so there's not that sort of issue of, who is the town attorney representing, is it the CEO or the board? I'm representing the board tonight. I'm here as a resource for you as you go through this process. And as you know, it's a, variance, and I can go through, sort of the variance for the new members, what that means and what the different criteria mean. When we get to that time, and it may make sense to do that sort of after the presentation if the board has specific questions about any of the review criteria, how to apply them, what the courts have said about those review criteria. I'm happy to do that as you go through this process. The end result from this appeal tonight will be ultimately a written decision one way or the other, whichever way the board goes. I'm happy to help prepare that written decision. For the board, a written decision is required under both the statute and the ordinance. And usually what I will do for boards is get the sort of which way the board is going on the issue, write it up and bring it to the next meeting and have the board adopt the decision one way or the other at that time. So that's just something we can talk about later, but I wanted to give you kind of the overview at the beginning, and if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them my way.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The decision, is it a yay or a nay in either way with no other caveats?
Well, the variance, it'll be yay or nay on their motion. I mean, they can make a motion either to grant the application as requested, to deny the application as requested, to grant something different from what was requested, something short of what the request was. Yeah, I will note that the law says that, a variance is supposed to be granted to the, to the most limited extent possible to allow for, if the criteria are met, you don't have to grant the whole, everything that's, under the sun. You can narrow it, in terms of what the board thinks is reasonable in order to accomplish the purposes. So we can talk about that more later once you get through all the evidence, both from the applicant, but from any member of the public, including DEP. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay, good evening. My name is Mark Belanger. I'm the homeowner at 185 West Shore Drive in East Waterboro. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to consider our appeal hopefully to build a garage at our property with little to no impact to Little Ossipee Lake. That's, I think, the primary reason why we're having issues is because we're in the shoreland zone, and it's obviously important to protect the Little Ossipee Lake. This is an undue hardship variance appeal, as I said, to construct a garage. It's really being requested. I'm trying to build a garage, and I'm appealing the denial of my permit for two reasons. First, I think it's important to eliminate the need to remove important erosion control measures that have already been put in place with proper drainage and diversion methods to minimize runoff into the lake. Ever since I've lived here, I've done everything to my property in terms of landscaping to prevent runoff and drainage from going from West Shore Drive all the way down the hill into the lake. I've put in drainage basins. I've put in underground drainage basins. The areas that have been put in for retaining walls have had drainage built into them. In the front of my house, there's an 8-foot French drain system under there that allows the runoff to come off of my roof and go into that drainage system and seep into the ground instead of going into the into the lake. Prior to me doing that project, there was literally probably about a 16-inch ditch in the front of the house that's all gone into the lake over the years prior to me owning the property. So we've done things like that to eliminate runoff and erosion into Little Ossipee Lake. And then secondly, in the wintertime, we live on this hill, and my wife is really terrified to drive down the hill in the ice. So she'll park at the top of the hill and walk down, and she's fallen. So, part of the hopes in building this garage is to be able to put an interior staircase into it so she doesn't have to walk that most dangerous section of that icy hill in the wintertime. So the focus for the rest of this presentation will be on the 4-part legal test for undue hardship. And I'll touch on each of those points. Primarily as outlined in my appeal application, which I think you all have a copy of, but also with some additional, what I feel are valid points for your consideration. The first is reasonable return. Let me start off by saying this. I'm not an attorney. I'm just the homeowner representing myself. I understand that you all received a copy of the letter from the DEP kind of outlining that I was going after maximum return with being able to build this garage. That couldn't be any further from the truth. I have no intention of selling my property. I look at it as a lifelong residence for my family. I just want to be able to enjoy the property to the fullest extent possible. It has nothing to do with return of any financial nature whatsoever. We're not currently receiving a reasonable return from that section of the property. Do you have photos of the property or where the garage is proposed to be built? Adam, can you?
So is that this one here, the land?
Yeah, that's my entire lot, but,
Is that the ones from 2020 you're talking about?
no, he's gonna,
Are these all different?
just give.
Yeah, they're all different.
Adam, why don't you, so, I just want him to see the one picture right now of where the garage is actually going into the hill.
Do you want to, are these going to be part of the administrative record for the case?
Yes, it can
Okay,
be.
so you
Yep.
cannot
Yep.
submit them, those aren't your only copy, I guess is my question.
They're your copy if you'd like to have them.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Why don't you give him that?
I don't know.
No, I just have aerials.
Yeah, I don't have
These are colors, I think they're the same thing in black and white.
Those are prior pictures from when a patio was installed with the
For the permit.
the last
rule.
permit by rule.
But, yeah, those are the photos.
So
from
where would the
permit.
garage be on here? Just
It would be right, from where that trash can is, on that, yep,
Okay.
all the way to the left.
On the top this way?
Back towards the bottom left-hand corner of the picture.
Back this way?
Yep, back
Along
that
the road
way.
right here. So it's kind of, you gave a mark this, right? So-
Yeah, go ahead, it's yours. It's yours.
Yeah, they just, I don't either, he just gave it to me.
Oh. No, what's that?
So it would be kind of, here's what he's saying. So this dirt portion, it's just for reference, the dirt portion here would be the part that's going over to this other lot, the 190788843 lot next door. Where the
Correct.
where the equipment shelter is.
If you kept driving, you'd be on the next lot.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Just trying to get my bearings.
yep.
I've never seen it over there. No, this is the road though, right here?
Nope, that's my driveway.
Oh, that's your driveway?
Yeah,
okay.
that's my
What's-
driveway.
So that's.
Oh, there's one, two houses, and then this is just a shed.
So this is his house?
Yeah.
This is
Here's
the
another
driveway,
one of
this is
those
the
pictures, you know, this is the, why don't you give that to Deborah at the end?
Basically where this shed is.
Yeah, see the shed there? That's that shed there.
If you were to look at the survey that was performed by Steve Everett to show the
So you would
existing.
be digging this hill out, taking those trees out, and kind of digging back
Yep.
that way?
Yep,
Is that
that's
how it
right.
works? Okay.
Yeah.
But where's the house at? We got
The house is,
on the other side?
is on the opposite side of the driveway.
House is here.
This is the house.
Oh, I got it now, okay.
So the driveway comes down between and actually feeds a couple more houses.
Exactly.
Right. So you come down the hill, just to kind of give you a visual of it, you come down the driveway from West Shore Drive, and the garage would be at the bottom of that hill on the left-hand side. My house is on the right-hand side.
I haven't been on that road in at least 12 years.
Oh, okay. Well, the overall hasn't really changed much, so.
So I'm like, you know, it's,
This is the neighbor's driveway.
Okay.
you could be showing me pictures of my own house.
So-
in the backyard.
Mark, can I ask you a quick question?
Dropping in the application.
For variance purposes, I see that they've outlined all four of the variance restrictions here. Like, do they have to meet all four? Is that?
Yeah, so the-
Because I hear you saying,
We do.
the value doesn't matter, but yet you've articulated pretty well here why you think the value is important. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious, just want to make sure. I
But,
understand.
well,
So was your question that you have to meet all four? The answer is yes. So the statute and your ordinance matches the statute. There's four criteria. You got to meet all four, and then when we get there, the board should vote independent, on each criteria independently, and then vote on the ultimate decision one way or the other.
Thank you.
And it's important to note that the first criteria of a maximum return isn't necessarily monetary. There are other reasons why you may not receive maximum return on a property than dollars.
and that's really leads me to my first point on this, it's not maximum return, that the DEP was stating that I was trying to get a maximum return, which is not correct. I'm trying to get a reasonable return of the use of my property. I want to be able to use my property to the fullest extent that I should be allowed to use my own property. This particular section of the property is currently basically a 45-degree embankment. It goes from the paved section, it goes back probably about 4 feet of unpaved mulched area, and then up a 45-degree embankment about probably, what is it, 14 feet?
Yes, 14 to 16
About
feet.
14 to 16 feet up. we're looking to carve into that embankment to be able to put the garage into that hill. And that would allow us to use that, 26 by 36 foot section of the property and receive a reasonable return out of it, for the land that's there. That's all we're looking to do, is be able to use the land that's there, and we cannot currently do that. You can barely walk up that hill right now, and so it's so steep. And the other thing I would also point out is it's being built in a similar way to a garage that was built just 2 houses down from me. There's another garage that's 2 houses down from me that was built into a very similar embankment. So it's just surprising that homeowner was able to build a garage into that embankment, but I'm not able to build a garage into this
That's where it would
embankment.
go.
So I would ask, like, when did they build that garage? You know?
That garage was built, I think probably in 2010. Okay, 2010. So, 12 years ago, not very long ago. The other things with reasonable return, garages, having a garage is important to maintaining your assets. You have vehicles, you have equipment, you want to protect those. There's tree damage in the area, there's ice damage in the area, and I should be able to, as a homeowner, protect the assets that we own from damage like that. And then there's also theft and robberies in the area from time to time. It's important to be able to, again, protect the assets that we own so that we can receive a reasonable return from those assets. If we can't cover them to keep them out of the elements or lock them up to protect them from thieves, then we'll never receive a reasonable return from them. The second test in the 4-part test is unique circumstances. I'd say this is an extremely unique circumstance. 3 of my neighbors have a right-of-way through my property. They and the owners before them apparently felt that they could pave that access, thereby creating the issue that we're discussing today. Has nothing to do with, me, putting pavers down or it really has to do with, something was caused, was inflicted on me and my family that was done by somebody else. That's really a unique circumstance there.
When was that paved?
When was it?
Do you know when they were paved? Was it before you bought it, or?
2010.
Again, 2010.
I think it was paved, repaved in 2010. It was paved before that. When I bought the house and property in 2005, there was pavement there before.
Yes.
And it was just improved. It was just improved and repaved.
Back in the 60s. It was pretty old.
Right, it's been paved for a long time. I'd like to just touch on these unusual circumstances and kind of lay out a few of them for you that are outlined in the application. The first one is that driveway that Mr. Corey just asked about. That's the Lehmans, and now the Shabbats also share that driveway. That's the single most biggest factor that's causing the problem in my application. There's 1,925 square feet there of pavement that's on my lot, causing 4.9% lot coverage. Second is John and Tina Provost. They live at 181 West Shore Road. They have, when you come down, and they share my driveway, but then they have a parking area in front of their house. So you come down my driveway and you take a immediate right. They've gone and paved about 400 square feet of that parking area. That's also on my lot. So that's caused another, not a lot, but it's 1% of additional lot coverage that I had nothing to do with. I didn't, they just came home one day and that was paved. So, that's just very unique for my situation. And then finally, again, very small issue, but my immediate neighbor, just off the end of the paved driveway that I have, has a portable garage there. And the previous neighbor that owned the place, Larry McIsaac, he put a portable garage up on, right on the property line. And I remember this back when I bought the property in 2005, and I was brand new, didn't want to ruffle any feathers at the time, but he was putting that garage up the day I moved in. And I'm like, well, okay, I don't think my lot goes over that far, so we'll just let it go. And come to find out, he came over to me, like a month later and said, hey, I hope you don't mind, but I didn't realize it. It's right on your property. Well, so I said, well, that's fine. I'm trying to be a good neighbor. You can just leave it there, and we'll deal with it at some other point. Well, now time has come where we need to deal with it, and he sold the house, a couple months ago to Don and Marie Shabbat, and that portable garage is still there. But Mr. Shabbat has told me that it's going to be removed, and it will likely be removed by tomorrow night. So that will take care of, it's again, probably 1/10% in this case, but that's lot coverage that will be opened back up to the elements shortly. So these three issues, all caused by my neighbors, causing 6% coverage of my lot. Without these coverage areas, my lot would have only been at about 16%. I can't exceed 20%. So had these issues not been caused by my neighbors, I think, I don't want to speak for the code enforcement officer, but I think that my application for permit would have initially been approved. So the goal here is I'm trying not to have to create erosion issues. I'm trying to preserve the landscaping as it is. I'm trying to not create additional hardship and conflicts with my neighbors if I have to tear out my neighbor's driveway to get the lot coverage that I'm required to have under this. It would cause a hardship for me in doing that. Not just a financial hardship, but but an emotional hardship. I have a really hard time. I like to be around the people that we live with and socialize with. It's a close-knit community, and to go to your neighbor and say, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to tear out your driveway is a horrible feeling. So I'm trying to avoid that. And that if tearing out pavement it's just going to cause more of an erosion problem at the end of the day. It's like I said in the beginning, I'm trying to help the lake and maintain it, and exposing sediment that is underneath the pavement is just leaving room for it to run into the lake. That's point 2 of this legal test. Third is the essential character. Essentially, I'm not changing the essential character. I'm not altering the character of the shoreland zone or the house lot in any way. I've always only taken measures, again, to protect the lake. The essential character of the property will still be maintained as a single-family dwelling, only for my family. I'm not putting in plumbing for this garage. It's just a garage. It's not a building that will be turned into an apartment or anything like that, or a second, a rental property. I'm not looking to do that. I like to have my own property without any tenants or just so it'll just be ours, and it's not any sort of a additional building other than just a garage. Fourth is that the hardship is not as a result of action taken by a homeowner. You know, part of the application did involve me putting down permeable pavers, which I mentioned at the beginning, were put down to cover over some additional drainage that was installed, again, to help the lake. Back in 2007, when I installed those permeable pavers, I don't believe that they were included in lot coverage under the DEP rules. They changed that law in 2008. So I feel that I should be grandfathered, and that should also be excluded from the coverage. But the law is the law, and I understand that's the case here. But those permeable pavers work extremely well, and the water runs through them into the ground without going into the lake. They do exactly what I wanted them to do. They're saving Little Ossipee. You know, as previously discussed, this hardship was actually caused primarily by one neighbor, the Lehmans. They've paved over 1,900 square feet of my land, which accounts for 5% of my lot, and then 2 other neighbors that account for an additional 1%. Like I said, had these things not occurred, I would be at about 16% lot coverage. Based on all of these three issues caused by my neighbors, had not been in place, my original permit application would likely have been approved, but without this, we're here tonight. For these reasons, in satisfaction of the legal test for undue hardship, I hereby do request that you approve our application for an undue hardship variance appeal. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd welcome any questions if you had them.
Just, it's a little one, but you
Okay.
said something about your wife going from the garage to the house
Yeah.
through the new garage. I mean, she still has to walk across the street and down the hill.
Now,
I
the
understand that part of it.
the slipperiest part of our driveway is the bottom half of it, and that's where she's always fallen. For some reason, she can make it partway down, but above where the garage is built, there's a landing there, and that's where our leach field is. So she's able to walk down to that part and then enter the garage from the top of it.
Where do you guys currently park? Maybe that would help if we knew where you guys are currently parking.
We're
Down.
currently parking down at the bottom in the driveway.
It's like down here or somewhere?
Yep, right down in there. That's all parking.
Like where
area.
this car is at here?
That's my car.
So that's where you park?
Yep. We park in that whole area.
Your house is over here though, right?
No, my house.
Over here.
I can't.
Maybe, if you could mark maybe on the plan where you park, that might be helpful.
The lake's here.
Let me see.
Yeah.
You can take that.
And this is the right.
So here's the plan. Here's the plan, and the lake is down here. The lake is down here. Here's the plan. Here's my house. This is the paved driveway. We currently park in this area right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. The only other question I have is for the lawyer.
Yes.
What is, with the right-of-way, what is his responsibility to say that, you know, that section's his and he has the wherewithal to do what he wants with it versus the people that have the right-of-way to go through? In other words, do they have the right to change his property
If you have
along the
a,
right-of-way?
yeah, if you have an access easement or a right-of-way, you typically have the right to make modifications to the property, which essentially gave that easement or is burdened by that easement to the benefit of the easement holder. There is something called the idea of overburdening an easement. So, you know, if you were to build a road that was, you know, the width of 295 within that area, or something that's, you know, much larger than needed, or is allowing more cars to go through there than should be, that's not allowed. But you're able to generally do the things that people would normally do to access their property, remove vegetation, surface the road,
Basically,
you know.
surface the road.
Surface a road. I mean, it doesn't have to be paved. I mean, it could have been something else that would be perhaps not pervious, you know.
So the question I have is, the road was paved essentially before you bought the property, correct?
It was.
So,
Yep.
you know, so that was done long before you bought the property. So that pavement was there and it was paid prior to you buying it.
It
So
was, yeah.
I guess the repavement, did the repavement take up more of area? Like, that's where I'm confused. Like, you bought the property knowing it was paved, and you only had X amount of space to use. So I'm confused why this 1,900 or whatever square feet, it's 1,925, I think you said, square feet of pavement. That was 1,925 square feet of pavement prior to even purchasing the property. So what's changed?
It was.
What's changed now since when you bought it then?
Nothing else has changed since we bought the property.
Okay. I guess that's my question, because you're saying that your neighbors burdened you by repaving it, and I was just trying to find out where that...
Not by repaving it, but paving it in the first time.
Okay. But that was done, it sounds like...
It was,
Quite a
yeah.
significant amount of time ago,
Yeah.
long before you bought the property.
Right, so whether it be my neighbors or a prior owner,
Yeah, I'm
the
just trying to
burden came
clarify.
upon me.
But they still had the right to pave this if the other people wanted it paved.
Not necessarily.
I believe it's a right of access. It's not, that would mean that he could also build a patio or a garage in that right of way if he wanted to, if he could go through
Well,
it.
no, because if it's an access easement, you can only build something that provides access. And so it's, the question sort of what's reasonable to build, and it may depend on what's, what everyone else in the area has. Does everyone else have paved, driveways, and is that sort of par for the course in that area? Then that would be probably allowed. We wouldn't be allowed to build a patio or a garage in an access easement because that's not providing access. That's for your enjoyment or for your parking.
And this easement's, it's pretty well worded in here, what you can have utilities, you can upgrade, you can cut back vegetation, it's pretty,
Right.
pretty clear in here what you're allowed to do, maintain and landscape areas within the easement
Right.
area.
Yeah, that's,
And,
so, if it was already there, it's,
Does that make it
You
a
know,
moot
it's-
point for this discussion? Does it make it kind of a moot point? It was already there when he bought the house, so he knew it was there.
it might play into your analysis of the situation, as to, whether the prior owner sort of permitted this to occur, so it may be the action of a prior owner by permitting, a paved drive to go in. It sounds like he obviously was not the owner at the time, so, that person paving it would not have been his fault, but it could have been the prior owner of his property who sort of permitted this to happen, and to increase the covered surfaces that is now leading to the request for the variance. One question I think that the board should clarify is in terms of what sort of in a numeric value, what exactly he's asking for a variance. How much of a percentage? For a setback variance, for example, this is not a setback variance, but if someone were seeking a setback variance, you'd be asking, well, how many feet are you asking for a setback? Because you're only allowed to get the minimum, sort of possible if they meet the standards that's needed to make it work. Similar here, I think you want to get from the applicant what a percentage. He wants to exceed the 20%, but I guess the question is by how much. It looks like on the plan, according to the survey, that's covered. The coverage is 22%, including structures, pavement, and patios currently. Obviously, a 960 square foot garage is proposed, so the question would be how much.
That's another, 2.4%, I think I did the math earlier.
I was going to say, you did that fast.
I came prepared tonight. So
You're in charge of that?
I did a little math. But I think my bigger question here is the part in the letter from the DEP where they say that the garage can be placed on another part of the property. Is that just unfeasible? Like,
It's
I don't,
not
I was kind of
possible.
confused. I'm like looking at your hill and you're, like, I don't know where in the world you put it.
It'd still be the same percentage wherever you put it on the property.
Well, that's the other thing. And,
Yeah.
Well, how much
I mean,
property
this
is there?
this is a pretty good sized garage too. That's a nice, that's good.
If
800 square feet?
960.
That's bigger than my first house in Waterboro.
Yeah, it's really not feasible to put it anywhere else on the property, and we'd still have the same lot coverage issue.
I just wanted
anywhere on
to
the
figure out what they meant, like,
Yeah.
it says that basically that it could be put on another spot, and this is, they're more talking about non-vegetated surfaces versus, it basically sounds like you could build it somewhere outside of the zone, but your whole property
My
is
whole
zoned.
property is in the shoreline zone,
That's what
so that's
confused me
not
about this.
possible.
What they're stating there is you could build it on the driveway that is also already considered coverage.
Correct, okay. So I guess the other question, maybe this is something for Bauer, Mr. Bauer, but here, does he have the right to rip up somebody else's pavement that's on an easement?
That I don't know. I mean, that would probably, I would assume that there would be, that's sort of a private, potentially a private dispute that I don't think that this board would want to get into the middle of. I think what you have to consider is what's before you. You could consider what is feasible for him, actions for him to take on his property that's unburdened by an easement, and I think that's kind of what the DEP was getting at as well. Are there pervious areas that he's under control himself that could be removed in order to free up some space for this garage?
Because I see there's 960 square feet of pavement to be removed. What exactly?
That sounds like the whole.
An example size.
An example, okay, thank you. So that's not actually something that's part of the plan?
No, that's not part of the plan at all.
Okay,
That was put on those drawings by the surveyor.
okay. So if you remove that 960 square feet, then would you still be within your?
We would be
Do you-
within the lot coverage allowance
Yeah.
if we removed that 960 square feet. That was the surveyor's solution for this issue. But that, like I've stated, that only causes erosion problems.
And also removes the easement that you're needing to have. Because they can't drive, unless they're gonna drive through your garage to get to their house.
No, that 960 square feet is right in my driveway where we park right now.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So that's not the road.
He didn't propose removing the pavement from my neighbor's driveway. He proposed
So
removing
just to be
my.
clear, is this is the one that goes to Lean's house, or is this the one that goes to William's house?
The top.
So nobody goes through here then? That's his driveway. That's just your
That's
driveway?
my driveway,
Okay.
and the provosts use it also.
All right, so they would have another access point if you did this, or no?
No, this won't affect their access point at all. Yeah, their access point will be exactly the same. Yeah. I'm only looking to have enough to allow my lot coverage to go enough to be able to get my permit approved with as little effect on the lake as possible. You know, I think that, everything that like I said, everything I've done has prevented erosion, and removing any of this pavement is going to cause erosion to the lake. It's just going to, you're exposing it, so where's it gonna go? It's gonna go into the lake.
So maybe, perhaps maybe the CEO could have a better understanding what the number would be, but I do think you want to have an idea of what number is being requested that would result in the ability to build the proposed garage, so that if there is a motion for that, then you know what that would be, because I don't think you can just sort of say that we're moving to give a variance from this criteria and then give carte blanche to whatever size garage he wants to build. You want to be clear about what the number is that's being requested, so that you know whether
Can you
to.
speak to like what, as far as like why it was denied and what was asked of you initially?
Yeah, so I think just for the vice chair's benefit, so the applicant has now given his presentation. I think it would be appropriate to ask, the CEO if he has any input on the application. I do want to clarify, there was reference made by the applicant to the idea of appealing the denial of the building permit. My understanding is that this is not an appeal of the denial of the permit, it's a variance appeal, which is a different thing. I just want to make sure. Is that right? Okay, I just want to make sure, because obviously this board has two different roles. One is to review decisions made by the code enforcement officer. The other is just the ability to grant variances from the zoning ordinance requirements, and that's what we're here for tonight. I just want to make clear. And then after that, I think you would want to open up to the public for the public portion, and anyone from the public want to speak. So.
Mike Gilpatrick, Code Enforcement Officer. I guess we can start out the very simple part. We had a quick question where you had asked the appellant if it was legal or would be feasible for him to rip the driveway surfaces up to, or he made a comment rather that he may entertain an idea of that notion. But somehow, shoreline zoning, the lot coverage is equated on non-vegetated surface. So even a gravel driveway counts against you for lot coverage. There's a very broad criteria. So whether it's paved or it's gravel or whatever, the lot coverage is there, and I kind of sympathize with the applicant here because obviously he didn't allow the driveways to be put in, but at the same time, you had a very valid point, were they there when you purchased the property? And the reason for my denial of the permit or what he may be claiming the hardship for the denial is very simple. It's the 20% lot coverage that we discussed. And in my eyes, I think the biggest task for the board to figure out is what hampers a reasonable return. So there are a couple different instances I'd like to go over with you if we can get the screen down. Maybe I set the lights off. I just want to show a couple of digital images that we have here. One is our zoning ordinance. One is our zoning map. And at the same time, I'd ask the board to look again at this existing condition survey closely. This is part, well, that's actually what's up on there now. So. My biggest concern in the event that you find out that it doesn't create a reasonable return and we go with the appellant. The big thing is we have a 100-foot line. This is allowed in this district beyond that portion. The location of the garage, as you can see by this existing condition survey, is very clearly in the utility easement. We need to give that some thought in the setback, if in the event that we decide that this is going to be permissible. A fair lot coverage amount, to me, would be probably 25%, just because when he puts this garage in, there's going to be some disruption to enter that garage from the back side, keeping in mind this is 2 stories. This garage will be 2 stories, so you'll be entering the garage from the upper level. As he said, it probably may be much safer in the event, in the event of ice and snow and so forth, but we are in Maine.
So the garage
So the garage is.
could be entered from the rear up on the second floor, the front on the first floor.
That's
So it kind of built into the hill a little bit.
Exactly, and that's the intent, and that, I believe that's what the appellant is trying to state by he's eliminating erosion or trying to help with erosion issues because you're going to have this big structure there that blocks a large portion of sheet flow off from that hillside. As long as he takes those measures, that it seems effective. However, we need to keep in mind that he exceeds the 20% lot coverage, and that by the shoreline zoning ordinance is not permissible. That's why we're here today.
So you're thinking that he's going to need, obviously the square footage of the place is going to be 960, but you're going to have to make a buffer for, I'm assuming, some sort of retaining wall, and then access, like you said, to the rear?
Exactly. In my eyes, for this to work properly, there's going to be a retaining wall here, and there'll be one over here to some extent. The reason being is because if this is allowable, we still need to move this building back out of that utility easement. It has to go much deeper into that hillside.
Right.
And you would have to, and we would be accessing it, he probably would be accessing somewhere on that side. Keeping in mind, though, it's still against our ordinance, and we could be setting a precedent here if we allow such a variance.
At that point, they're going to have to clear more vegetation to get access to the other road from the back side of that garage.
Exactly, and that's why I mentioned that we would go with the 25% lot coverage, because that may give him the ability to make a driveway off from the other one, and then the small apron in front of the garage would be considered as well.
Your 2 dotted lines here are the 100-foot from the water, which goes down the middle of the driveway?
Yep.
So that's your 2 different lots, ordinances that you're talking about. But the dotted line that goes to the garage is really just showing a division of where 2 properties have come together in the past.
It strikes me as, I see it looks like there's a pole there, but we need to get that delineated definitively on here before we
Yeah, I
can.
can see, I saw that from the picture.
Because the pictures that are shown, there are lines running right over where the intent for the garage is to be.
There is a power line.
And if you talk to
There
the
is a
two-story-
power line.
Exactly, and that utility easement we need to keep in mind is 20 feet wide.
Yep,
So,
right.
time to take that into consideration.
That's 10 feet each side.
Correct.
So, and if you're gonna go,
That's everything up there too.
Dave, can we have the GIS?
I mean, you can't.
GIS
put
map
your-
real quick?
That's carbon.
What is this?
feet from that line.
Power lines and the
Where your
transfer.
current line is now, really to go from.
Let's go with the 20, his house, this one off the top.
What's the current setback that you guys are looking for off this road, or off the driveway? Would it be-
The rear setback
No,
from
the
there?
front, like where would the front be in relationship to this picture? Would it be right at that post where the trash can is? Is that what that
Yeah,
flag?
just, if you see that
There's
shed.
like a flag right there, is that?
Yep, we'd be just behind, we're thinking we're just behind that shed off the pavement.
Right.
For the purpose that driveway grades down as the hill goes down, and if we park a garage into the hillside, then the garage, we don't want to create more surface area from the garage having to get to the pavement, so if you're near the pavement, you're there. and
There's
you
going to be
wouldn't have to
entrances to
shoulder
this garage from this road and from the other road.
And
it. Downstairs, if you drove down his driveway, you're going to drive into a three-car garage, it'll be 3 bays.
On the left.
put the shoulder layer on.
This one.
Yep, upstairs
picture.
is storage.
Okay, then then the second floor, are you coming in on that from the other hill?
No, you won't park your car in the second floor of the garage, but there'll be a
That's
garage
just
door there for
storage.
like a ATV or a snowblower or something like that, no vehicles.
So when you come down the driveway, you're gonna make a 9-degree turn into the garage.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly right.
If
Yep.
you move the garage to where he showed it on the plan, you wouldn't be able to back out, you'd have to back out your entire driveway up the hill.
Can you guys give us a number, what the actual, I mean, I get, you're saying you're at 22%, what's the legitimate number when this would be done with garage easements, with the retaining walls, all the coverage you're gonna need? Do you have a ballpark number on what you're looking at? I mean, you said 25-ish?
And yes, but I just wanted to throw that number out there because, in the event that we decide this does prevent him from a reasonable return, it's going to be very difficult to make a definitive decision tonight. Okay? This is another portion of our GIS software that we have. This is a resource protection area that you see the green dotted area on this map. And as you can see from his waterfront to the front of that resource protection, or the furthest point rather, the furthest of the resource protection area is 188 feet. It shows on his site map that this is probably about 120. Sorry if my glasses, I'm not getting used to 111 and a half. Getting used to the glasses, sorry.
So he's got 77 feet.
He's got to move that back and kind of reconfigure it, because an accessory structure isn't allowed in the resource protection district without some other caveats from planning board approval. So this isn't, there's some more variables here that need to be ironed out. In the event that you decide that this prevents him from getting a reasonable return. The reason why I continue to state that is because in intents and purposes, all intents and purposes, he meets all 3 other criteria because he's a non-conforming lot, in my opinion. I'll state. But I feel as though he meets all 3. That's the gray area, is to determine where we're at with a reasonable return. So there are some other, not to confuse the matter more, but unfortunately, there's a lot of variables here.
Just
Is
listen.
there any,
Reasonable concern, I mean,
are there any questions for the CEO? Then let's have them, and then if not, then we can move to public comment after that. Okay, sorry.
From this, let's say from the paved line, okay? How far back would he have to really move this structure? Or make the structure smaller?
Well, a lot of that's going to depend on your findings. Because if we decide, or the board decides that you're going to allow 26, 25% lot coverage, then he has to approach the planning board to gain approval of building in the resource protection zone. So, in that calculation needs to be presented in a couple of different scenarios in order for us to come to that determination. We could say, okay, we're just gonna move him back another 20 feet so that we minimize disruption. And then how much lot coverage is he gonna need for driveway at the top of on the second floor to enter from the street side? In the retaining wall, you wouldn't need you were not gonna need any drain, no surface up there at all?
No.
For enter, just a pathway?
It's already there. That's where,
Well, that's good, that we need that illustrated, we need that, so that we can make that determination and get a definitive number for lot coverage.
Yep, so when Steve Everett went out and where the septic chamber is, that's, you can drive on that.
Sure.
There's grass there, it's vegetative, but you could park your car right in front of where that potential garage would be and open a door and go inside. It's vegetated.
And that's part of the variable that I'm seeking, is, okay, when you park there, obviously, it's not gonna stay vegetated for very long. So.
You park a warm car there, it's gonna burn the grass up.
And that all goes back to, well, that's why I feel like today's project is to determine whether he meets the 4 criteria. Then we can kind of tailor that to go back, get some more information on exactly where the garage is gonna be placed, what potential he has for lot coverage, and then we can go from there on that portion, as far as a definitive number. Because at the end of the day, when the board makes its conclusion, we have to come up with a finding of facts that's gonna work for everybody.
And we're setting prior practice possibly for something else as well, which I know
Exactly.
shouldn't have to come into their account, but you can't change it for one and without it, it'll never end, so.
In this
Yes,
case, it's
exactly.
20%, right?
Exactly. That's the maximum allowed, is
Is
20%.
that the state law, or is that the?
Ordinance, the ordinance,
That's
yeah.
Well, now that's.
Which is consistent with the mandatory shoreline zoning.
It's the same as the state law.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
They're both
but it's
20%.
adopted by the town as an ordinance, yeah.
May I ask a question? What's the average on Ospey Lake currently?
That is another tough one. And unfortunately, you're a little early with that question for me, because that is a big, one of my goals for the next 5 years. We have an awful lot of properties that are over this 20%. What's the average distance from the high water? The state and DEP has mandated it be 100 feet. Well, if we compile the data and get an average, or find some sort of mean or common ground, and then we can petition the state, provided that our water quality stays what it is, we can petition the state to alter our ordinance. So, to give you a definitive answer on what's the average lot coverage on Ospey Lake, it's,
And my
if I did guess, it would be
my question
20,
was
25.
leading to that there are probably multiple other lots
Right.
where this is a
Correct.
similar situation, but
Correct.
maybe have seen their way through the hardship as well.
and I,
Or they were built prior to the ordinance.
and I believe that the average is in the neighborhood of 22.
Right.
22%.
We
And
don't have
that's
any
why-
data.
And that's why Steve Everett proposed the 22%. That's exactly why he proposed that in our.
And
But
he would
can I
be,
ask you a question? Do you think you can legitimately put this in and stay at 22%, including all of the retaining walls? If we did give you the 22% variance, let's just say, and you can do this retaining wall and all of this existing structure, you think you're still going to get 22?
The
I really have a hard time.
22% is with removing the pavement.
Yeah, lot size is 39,400.
22% is with removing the pavement.
Existing lot
Right,
coverage
but you're
is
still, but my
22%.
point is that 960 square feet is what the building is going to be, correct? That doesn't include any of the, like, any retaining walls or anything else you're gonna have to support to keep that landslide from coming in on the garage.
Right.
You're gonna have to support the ground around it.
Well, technically, there's
Or
a
you-
hill right now
Yeah.
that if I don't do anything,
It's gonna
and I
wash.
put a garage right in there with no retaining walls on the side, doing anything with that earth, it'll be doing exactly the same thing that it's doing right now, or if I put a
Well, right,
26 by 36 building.
except it can slide in and take your garage out when it goes down.
Well, no, it's gonna go down beside it, just like it goes down the hill now, it's just
Yeah.
gonna go beside it. And actually, I would have some runoff collection drains where it's gonna go to and be taken care of.
Maybe a better question, with the concrete that you'd be pouring in there, would that be holding the wall
That might, I guess maybe that's.
Yeah, my concrete would stay there.
Would be thick, would be-
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I don't know that the gentleman who was just speaking has ever identified himself for the record
Oh, sorry.
as being here.
I'm his builder. I'm
Okay.
Canterbury Homes. Yep.
And your name?
Adam Winslow.
Okay.
Sorry.
Builder, and what's the company you're with?
Canterbury Homes, Canbury.
Okay.
So the concrete's made to stay. I mean, there's drainage,
No, I get
there's
that.
drainage
I
around the
just- I
bottom.
just didn't know if it would wash out.
Yeah.
The building itself.
Be just like any other
Well,
home.
that's side of Pittsburgh and the Appalachians, you see what we're doing on the side of.
I love it.
So I think you may want to open it up for public comment at this point.
This is iron.
Hi, my name is Bob Lehman. I live at 189 West Shore Road. The driveway that Mark's referred to a lot today is my driveway. But what I want to really talk about is we're really talking about the removal of pavement. We're not talking about whether or not Mark builds his garage or not. We're talking about removement of pavement, which is going to create an erosion problem. Whether it's my driveway that has to come out or whether it's his driveway that has to come out, it's opening a surface that receives a lot of water from West Shore Road down the hill. Just to give you an idea, I checked on my driveway. My driveway's at a 20% slope. I mean, not a 20%, yeah, 20% slope. And Mark's is steeper. So, in the area of woods that we're talking about, that he would have to remove some trees to put the garage in there, you're probably talking about a 6 or 8 foot span that has minimal trees on it, because you're gaining in probably a 10-foot area, you're gaining 14 feet of height. It's a very, very steep bank on the side of his driveway. My garage is kind of what he was talking about, modeling it after. Your concerns about the building being bothered by that. My back wall is 10 inches thick with 2 layers of rebar in it. So, I mean, your structural guys are gonna make sure that you do that right. And the drainage in that area is phenomenal. I mean, once it hits the ground, it pretty much goes in unless we get torrential downpours. And that's when we have our washouts. Again, on Mark's first item, minimum return and maximum return, you kind of want to be somewhere in the middle. You don't want to tell somebody they have to use their property to the minimal level. And I don't believe Mark's asking for maximum either. I can tell you that in the wintertime, I have driven his wife up and down the hill, wife and children up and down the hill with groceries multiple times with my four-wheeler because you couldn't walk up that driveway. So stopping at the top level, which is less of a slope, and being able to walk through would make that a lot safer piece of property to access.
So basically, you'd be using the top septic area to park on in the winter, is that kind of what we're hearing?
No, we would still likely park.
He parks at the top of the road in the winter, he doesn't even use his driveway.
Yeah.
Okay, that's,
Yeah, he was talking about like his wife comes out, be able to go in the garage,
Yeah, well,
up the steps
yeah,
in the
she would
garage,
still
and then
walk.
across.
yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Basically, she's using the garage as an escalator, sort of.
Yeah, just walk her groceries down through it, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at the picture that you have from April 2016, that shows you a little bit more of what stuff is. There's I think that's a white trailer or something parked up on the top level in his driveway. But that's, as you can see, there aren't very many trees there anyway. So Mike was talking about the conservation area. The amount of trees that are going to be removed there are going to be minimal. I wouldn't guess a dozen at most. And they're all on, like I said, that huge slope that, I mean, if there's a possibility they're going to wash out anyway. So, whether or not you have to go to the planning board on that, I guess you do, I don't know.
You can't turn the garage sideways and just put it on that.
Well, if you have to move it back from the wires, was another thing Mike brought up. So
Oh, yeah.
if you were talking that you did the math, it was 2.4, I think you said, percent. So that would bring him up to 24.4. I think the 25 was a good number, because if you move it back, he's gonna wanna have a solid surface right in front of the garage door if it has to go back another 10 feet.
So I guess that's my question, is this 22%, is that including the garage?
It is.
That's what the garage built, right?
Yep.
Well, I would just point out that the survey says existing lot coverage equals 22%, including structures, pavement, and patios. So existing, I would assume, does not mean proposed garage.
That is not with the garage, no.
So, yeah.
That's the way I read it
Yeah.
also.
Right, but the garage is 960 square feet, and he's proposing to remove 960 square feet. So he's proposing,
So it's still gonna be 22%.
still going to be 22%.
If you do that, which creates the erosion problem.
Correct.
Now, at that place where he's talking about removing the erosion, Mark has drains in there, he has a swale in there to catch any of the runoff from it, and he also has a dry wall there, so.
Which is all
or a
based
French
on,
drain.
all based on the pavement. All that
Right.
drainage happens because of the way the pavement is made.
So, I mean, realistically, so like, this is a question for Mike, if it's okay, but somebody talked about pavement versus, or vegetation, or you said rock, whether it was stone or not. So essentially, you're saying they're gonna have to plant something in that 960.
It has to be
It has to
vegetated.
be vegetated, okay.
And that was why I tried to make that point, that you really need a little bit more information before we lock in on a percentage of lot coverage that's allowable. You know, we kind of have to go back to the drawing board, okay, if the board would like to see him leave that, then maybe we're looking at 28. You know, to 30% lot coverage.
Well, if the math on the garage is 2.4, and you're at 22,
Right, then you add 960 square feet, you're gonna be probably.
That's another two-
no, that's counting the 2.4.
It's another 2.4.
So that brings it to
Then-
24.5.
Then you have to, then you say he puts a 10, 12-foot apron in to get out of the utility easement, once that's located, so that we can determine where exactly that needs to be.
Another 90 square feet or so.
Right. Times 36. So 10, yeah.
360 square feet there.
Exactly.
So which is another third, which is another.
Yeah, what about 28?
Another eighth of an acre, or eighth of.
Yeah, well,
Eighth of a percent.
So,
And then you gain some from the removal of the shed.
we need some more definitive numbers, that's all.
Yep.
If what we need to do is determine whether or not you're going to allow this, if it's, that's our first step, and then at that point, I would advise, no, sorry, I should let you do that.
Yeah, well, I did want to say, you're not considering an application here tonight, a building permit, that's not your role. You're not the planning board, so you're not considering a site plan application tonight with all the various things. What you're basically determining is, does the applicant meet the criteria for an undue hardship variance? If so, you need to come up with a percentage. If not, the percentage is irrelevant, right? So that's why I wanted to get at what's being requested, not what sort of the town is willing to give. So, you kind of want to know what is actually being requested from the
So can I ask
applicant.
a reasonable return question from you guys then? You bring up other houses that have garages. Do you have a percentage of how many houses on the lake have a garage? You kind of threw back, hey, what percentage is,
No,
is over
but
20%?
They should all probably be on a building permit somewhere in the town. Town should know.
I would say almost every year-round resident has a garage.
Absolutely.
Actually, you could go to the same term and say Maine, who needs a garage in the state of Maine in the snow belt? And whether or not that seems like something that would be proper to build in Maine or not, could be another question. Whether or not it's Ospey Lake could be a whole separate question.
And I'm happy to go into the reasonable return criteria, because there's a lot of guidance on that I can provide. But you may want to just finish out with the public comment first, and then we can sort of get into that discussion.
Do you have anything further?
I just wanted to reiterate that this project is more than 100 feet from the water. So impact on the lake is minimal unless they have to move the pavement. Minimal or non-existent, actually. And there's a lot of projects that are right up to the water's edge. think that's basically what I had for notes, because I did go over this pretty thoroughly myself, but grades of the driveway, like I said, mine's a 20% grade. At the base of his driveway, I would bet is almost a 30% grade. And then it eases off. I don't like plowing it unless I have chainsaw. And I have plowed it before, and I have spun out on it before, and it's a very dangerous driveway. So the ability to use the upper part and walk down through a set of stairs to get to their residence, I think, helps with the reasonable return.
Do you have to take, are you gonna have to tear up any of the pavement, or is it, because it's under the wires?
No, we can excavate the project.
No, the pavement is not currently under the wires. Well, other than when you drive down the hill, it goes underneath the driveway, and people have wires over their driveways all the time, you know?
Yeah.
Every house that you enter around here has pavement.
And again, so if the board were to grant a variance, he would need to go then to the CEO to get a building permit, iron out all those issues about where this is going to be located. Is it going to be located in a utility easement area, that kind of stuff?
What I was asking is the paved driveway a moot point, because he doesn't want to tear it up, correct?
Right.
So,
He's asking-
More square footage, that's all. The paved, whether it's paved or whether it's.
oh, with the stake and...
Whether it's paved or gravel, it's a non-vegetated surface, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So he's asking basically for
Can you leave
an
it?
increase of ground coverage.
Correct.
That's all I have.
Yeah. You could say that's in order to maintain reasonable access to his residence, really.
I would say a reasonable level of ground coverage that you need. With the additional setback that I understand, we're gonna have to push the garage back, 10 feet off of the power line. That with the garage being 36 feet long, that line is currently probably about 3 feet off the driveway, so we would have to add an additional 13 feet, an additional 468 square feet of pavement in front of the garage to get to the driveway, which is about 1.2%. So with that taken under consideration too, we would probably need to have a lot coverage allowance of 26%.
Any other members of the public?
Selectman Dwayne Woodson. I got a couple questions here, because he hasn't got any setbacks. He's got 2 roads that he needs setbacks to. He keeps saying it's his driveway, but other people are using it, which is a right-of-way.
No, it's not a right-of-way, it's a right-of.
Right of passage?
It's an easement.
Now,
That's right.
if somebody else has got a right of passage, that's a front yard setback. Am I correct?
No, it has to be off a traveled, well, it says,
It's a traveled way,
right,
and
The
fire
seasonal
trucks,
problems.
ambulances, and all of these things have the right to get down through there.
we need a 20-foot travelable surface is the.
And the surveyor did not, anywhere that I can find, identify that right-of-way of 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. Johnson Lumber gave a right-of-way down through there, without a doubt, to every one of them camp lots that was sold in the 40s, or shortly after the 47 fire into the 50s. And they all, in a deed, have a right-of-way to get from Weber Road to their camp, somehow, every one of them, or they wouldn't be there. And there's 2, in my mind, 2 front yard setbacks on that survey. So,
Is that West Shore off Route 5?
I'd like to address what Gordon just commented on.
Thank you.
So if you look at where the power line is on the drawing, or the drawings that were shown, that power line is the old West Shore Road. That was when they put that in, I forget the name of the subdevelopment.
Johnson Park.
Johnson Park. So when they created Johnson Park, that's where the road was. So at some point in time, which I don't know when, they moved that road up to the top of the hill, but they never moved the power lines up, which has been talked they're going to do, but they've never done that. So that, the right-of-ways weren't there, so when they moved that road back, it just became people crossing other people's land, is all it was.
So,
Because you can't deny access to somebody's land.
okay. I was picturing this on the Weber Road, but you're out on the backside of Route 5.
We're on West Shore Road, going to Weymouth Point, which is where the road originally ended.
And the camp owners bought together this piece of land where the road is now from Frank Cow, and that was created to be a 50-foot right-of-way.
No, wrong section.
Okay?
Yeah, you're talking around the corner.
Okay,
This is the first section right at the end of the pavement,
okay. Blackburn.
right across from Blackburn's, down that
Okay.
steep hill.
Yeah, yeah.
So West Shore Road now is the right-of-way where they need their setback
Right.
from, not the driveways, because all that is people crossing someone else's land to get there. They're just
There's still a right-of-way.
It's not legal right-of-way, it's not on any plans that there's a legal right-of-way. It's just a right of passage to cross someone's land.
Somewhere Johnson Lumber had to put a right-of-way in
Wasn't
there.
Johnson Lumber when they moved the road.
No, it wasn't Johnson Lumber. But in the beginning, there had to be a right-of-way to get to those camps. There was a subdivision that was,
In the beginning, the West Shore Road was down where the power line
I
was,
understand that,
which is his driveway.
yeah.
His lower driveway is where the right-of-way was.
It's still on some of the maps or deeds, there's got to be a width to that right-of-way.
No,
Never seen one that has not been a width.
no, she's gonna go get it, but
Okay.
it's not on his deed. We have a copy of his deed, it's not on his deed. It doesn't say anything about a
I
right-of-way.
said you read it, so-
So I don't know if you wanna agree with me or.
It's probably 12 to 15 feet, that's typical for what, if you see in the deed from back in that period.
But
That's
but back in that
The
period,
12 to
that
20,
The-
12
the
to 20, it's
trouble
just a
was,
12-foot
the
right-of-way.
got moved several times, but they went around the tree.
Right, it takes
Cutting the
6 months.
tree,
deed
making the
research.
right.
the driveways are pretty
Yeah.
straight, but they're extremely steep to get up that bank and,
Yeah.
but yeah, the setback would be off West Shore Road. When I built my garage, it was off West Shore Road. I had Gale Lane right behind me, which is a driveway for 2 camps. And it was based off West Shore Road also.
Yeah, just to clarify, the application is not for a setback variance, that, it's not been identified by the CEO, I just want to make that clear for the record.
But I just wanted to clarify that it is not a legal right-of-way, it's a driveway. Or it's an access point for us to get to our property.
So it's like a joint driveway, kind of.
Yeah, all the driveways down there are joint driveways.
Like, it'd be like 2 houses were here and here, and they had one driveway that went like this. Gotcha.
It'd be the same if you owned a piece of property, sold a piece of property out back, and you gave them a right-of-way access to get to property.
Oh, this is like,
That's
road
what-
comes down, this can't.
Can't, yeah, the packed in looks hard.
But there are no setback requirements with those rights of access.
I know what you're
Yeah,
at.
again, we're not talking about setbacks, so we can sort of let that go. So, are we, you want to close the public hearing if we're, okay, all right. So now, I think it may be useful for the board, I'll defer to you, but to just at least go over the criteria a little bit, if that's helpful. Because, again, we are here on an undue hardship variance under the shoreland zoning ordinance, and there's 4 criteria. The first one, which is a lot of the discussion tonight has been around the first one, is the applicant has to demonstrate that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted, okay? So the variance, again, that's being requested is for the lot coverage 20% maximum that's currently exceeded. One case, obviously, these ordinance criteria are the same in pretty much every, it comes from statute, so every ordinance that applies to shoreland zoning has the same criteria. And so the courts have given some instruction to local boards about what these criteria mean, okay? So one case that's useful is a case called Bailey versus the City of South Portland. In that case, the Maine Supreme Court says that the standard for measuring reasonable return, which is the first criteria, is whether strict compliance with the terms of the ordinance would result, in other words, meeting the ordinance requirement, whether strict compliance with the terms of the ordinance would result in the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land. Okay, so that's one, that's one important point to keep in mind, is whether, if you don't grant the variance tonight, are you essentially denying or creating the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land? When considering that, you may want to consider how long the property's been owned, how it's currently used, whether it's currently usable, that sort of thing. Another case is the case that Jeff Kalinich from DEP, and again, he's not an attorney, but he is the Shoreland Zoning Director. He made reference to this case, Barnard versus Zoning Board of Appeals of Yarmouth. And in that case, not entirely, I mean, there's no case that's exactly on point with, what's being requested, but in that case, the owner wanted to divide a 40,000 square foot lot and wanted to be able to build on 2 lots. But the lot size requirement was 30,000 square feet. So he had 40,000, wanted to divide it into, asked for a variance to be able to have the other one be buildable. In that case, the court said, admittedly, the denial of the variance will have the effect of barring the appellant from increasing the value of the land by placing another dwelling upon it. That circumstance does not, however, render the entire parcel unmarketable. In order for her land to yield a reasonable return, appellant need not be accorded every conceivable opportunity to maximize her return or potential return in derogation of a duly enacted and legitimate zoning ordinance. And so that brings me to another point, is that the courts have said, sort of as far back as the 50s and 60s, that variances are essentially, the courts have said not to be easily or lightly granted, and they should be the exception and not the rule. And the reason for this is that, in essence, what is being requested of you is to amend the zoning ordinance tonight for this particular, application. You're being asked to relax or change the lot coverage requirement for this application. And so, in that, when you think about it that way, that's why the case law has been that they shouldn't be easily granted, because you don't want to sort of easily, take the role of legislator on these things. But the reason for allowing variances, undue hardship variances, is that if the towns are not able to do that, if they don't have the authority to issue a variance, it could result in what's called a regulatory taking of the property. And so you're probably familiar with the idea of eminent domain, taking the property by eminent domain, where the town goes and takes property for a road or whatever it is. There's also this idea of a regulatory taking. So if the property is regulated too heavily that it's not permitted to be used, and it's rendered sort of unusable, or, like the court said, the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land, a property owner would be entitled to compensation for that. And so the law and the statute and the courts have built into that sort of this escape valve idea of, well, you can grant a variance so that you're not, so that you avoid a situation where there's too much regulation so that the property can't be used and it doesn't have any value anymore. So it's been taken. So you have to sort of think about tonight, if you're applying the variance, the ordinance requirements as is, are you essentially taking the property? Are you allowing for some reasonable use of property even if you don't grant the variance? That's what the courts have sort of said. So one instance where a variance was issued and upheld was this case, Marchie versus Scarborough. And in that case, they were looking for a variance from the setback provision. And the setback provisions in that situation, because it was a corner lot and there were 2 front setbacks, would make the lot unbuildable. So there was it was a single-family lot, but because of the setbacks, they wouldn't have been able to put a house on it. And so in that case, the court did agree that the variance was appropriate because there would be a practical loss of the substantial beneficial use of the land without it, because really you couldn't do anything with the land. It was, without the variance, you wouldn't be able to put a house on it. You wouldn't really be able to use it. So that's, a situation where an undue hardship variance was granted and upheld by the courts.
That wouldn't have been a setback variance?
So that was a setback variance, yeah.
Right, that's not what we're going after.
Well, a setback, so just to be clear, an undue hardship variance can be a number of different variance requests. It could be an undue hardship variance from the setback requirement. It could be from the frontage requirement. It could be from the lot coverage requirement, and that's what the situation is here, is the lot coverage. It's any dimensional requirement that's required. It could be a height, could be a height restriction. So you're only allowed to get a variance from dimensional requirements under the ordinance. If it's in the shoreland zoning area, it has to be under this undue hardship, this 4-factor. So whether it's a setback, lot coverage, lot size, frontage, it has to, if it's in the shoreline zone, it has to go through these 4 criteria. So that's why, any of these cases, if they're involving the same criteria, they're relevant to sort of what you're thinking about. Again, it doesn't mean, maximum return, and you have to sort of consider, what's a reasonable return, what's a maximum return, that sort of thing. So that's sort of the first, criteria, and I'll stop there, ask if there's any questions that the board has about at least the first one.
Would you guys rather go through each one and then vote?
Yeah,
After the
that's usually
explanation?
what we do.
I think we definitely should have a discussion on them, but
Yeah.
I was gonna, to your point earlier, what is the final number that you guys are looking for? Like, what's the number that you want us to vote on tonight? Like, I think we need to hear that from you. Like, what's your?
I believe that 26% lot coverage would suffice in this situation.
So that's what you guys are asking for?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to be clear before we. So I heard a lot of numbers kicked around, and
6% more.
So it'd be 6% more than what's the allowable. And I guess from a legal standpoint, we have the right to go against the state law. The state law says 20% of shoreline zone. We even have the right to.
Well,
we've adopted the ordinance, and that's what we're losing over here.
Sure, the board certainly has the authority under the ordinance and the statute to grant a variance from that 20% requirement. You do want to take into account, you certainly would want to, take into account what DEP's, position on it is when you're doing your deliberations, taking both sides, when you're considering it. But the DEP is responsible for enforcing shoreland zoning, and they often will take a position, and that's why, you're required to give notice to DEP when there's a request for a variance in the shoreland zone. And they often will submit comment like they did tonight, and at times it's been known that they will appeal decisions that grant a variance within the shoreland zone. They will sometimes force a municipality to enforce the shoreland zoning ordinance if they don't, and I'm sure Mike knows about that. It's an important, it's an important part of DEP. So to answer your question, you certainly. The 20% requirement is what the ordinance and state law requires, but there is the ability, like I was saying before, to vary that through a variance in order to avoid a situation where you're essentially taking away property owner's ability to use the property in a reasonable way. And so that's really what, sort of the first one is getting at. Are we talking about the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land? Or are we talking about something else? And so that you've got to meet that requirement in order to meet that first criteria. The second one is the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not the general conditions of the neighborhood. So in that, you want to consider what, is there something about the property that is different from the neighborhood generally that gives rise to the need for a variance that sort of everybody else wouldn't, have the same need, So basically, is it, you kind of think about it, when the shoreline zoning ordinance was enacted, were they sort of really not thinking about this property, in particular, it's unique or in some way, it's got, an especially odd, for a setback variance, for example, sometimes there's just no way to meet the setback, just the way that the property is configured, or it's steep or something like that, that kind of thing. So that's the second one. The granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality, so it's, how will this, sort of impact the harmony with the rest of the area? Is it, is it going to be an outlier in some way? Is it going to, impact neighboring properties, that kind of thing? And then the hardship's not the result of action taken by the applicant or prior owner. So that's what we call the self-created hardship. And the sort of classic example there is that I always use with boards is, a property owner divides their property into two lots that are not conforming to zoning. And then they go before the board and say, I'd like to have a variance now. And the board says, well, you're the one who split the lot. You can't go and split a lot and then come before the board and say, I need a variance now because I've got two lots that are substandard. That's a self-created hardship. But again, it could be the action of the current applicant or a prior owner. If that's sort of what's giving rise to the need for the variance, then it's that particular criteria would not be met. And I sort of didn't hear a whole lot on those few. It seemed like a lot of the discussion was around the first one, but I think the other ones, obviously, you need to go through those as well, and make a decision on each of the four criteria as you're going through your decision.
And actually, something I never thought about, like how far is the zoning, like how's the zoning set off? Is that going as a crow flies, like straight line, or is it kind of up here?
It is. It's as the crow flies. A lot of it is taken with instruments, from surveyors, and that's why we require.
So I can see where that would be a problem, because for these guys, because their lot is so steep, they can't lose some buildable space. Exactly. So that would be
The other consideration is safety. Safety on the lot, which he does have a problem. It's not safe.
But you could park on top and put a set of stairs and you still get the same result as what they're
Well-
basically, they're just basically building a fancy covered stairs at that point,
Well, yeah, take
for
it
lack of
back.
coverage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could relocate his whole driveway and make it work.
Right.
But his neighbor to the left will no longer have a driveway.
He-
So that brings up another point, is the board should also consider, whether there's some alternative, there has to be a need shown for the variance, and whether there's some alternative where he could somehow could meet the lot coverage requirement without getting a variance from the board, then that would also be, grounds for saying no. If there's some, and I don't know, whether the board has heard it, enough to know whether there are alternatives. Does a 3-car garage necessary, or could it be a 1 or 2-car garage, that kind of thing? Could other materials that are non-vegetated areas become vegetated areas, and then that kind of thing? That's what sort of the letter from DEP asked that question: is could there be some basically bring down that 22% calculation somewhere below 20%, so that you're somehow meeting that. That's something to explore as well.
So I understand that currently you're at 19.6, is that kind of where we're at, like lot coverage without?
I think the survey said 22%.
So I guess my question is, how do you get over 22 to begin with?
Well, a lot of properties are what are called non-conforming properties. So they, when the zoning ordinance is written, it's sort of written as they want lots going forward to meet those requirements. And so you may have properties where, and I think reference was made before, that you have setback, you have camps that are right on the lake that aren't set back 100 feet, right? Those are not meeting current zoning either. So probably, this was 22% before shoreline zoning was.
Should we be clear about this and say that we're increasing it to 2%? Because, like, realistically, it's already over.
Well, you don't need to grant a variance, so they're allowed to be, what's called legally non-conforming, or grandfather is the colloquial term, but if you're a grandfathered lot, you're allowed to keep using your property as is without getting any approval from this board. So they can continue on as, covering more than 20% of the lot, just as someone who's got a 10-foot setback from the water can continue to use their camp even though they're not 100 feet back from the
I guess in
water.
my brain it changes it a little bit just because we're going from, it's already at 22, so we're only adding a little bit more.
I believe
you know what I mean?
part
So
of the
that's not-
22 problem was in 2007, your pavers were considered permeable.
Right.
Which covered
That's
as
2008,
vegetation.
2018, I
And
think.
they
Yeah,
were, they
that's
were
right.
allowed to be used then for that, and you could put permeable pavers down where vegetative ground might have
Just
been
another
and
2%.
accounted for that. And now Water Road does not see permeable pavers as the same.
The DEP.
DEP, I was just like, I'm not on that one.
In Maine, because I believe in other states in the country, like if you go to California and places, or really urban where there's no grass, I think you'll find that those construction methods are probably used a lot more.
Again, one thing you may want to ask about is are there alternatives? Can some areas be removed? I think there was reference to some patio areas, some other, the pavement, so there's 960 square feet of pavement that's proposed to be removed. I couldn't tell from the drawing, is there pavement beyond that area? There's some dashed lines, I couldn't really tell. That's the sort of thing that.
If we said in our thing, we'll agree to the change as long as that comes up and they vegetate it, and that must be required prior to.
Well, that would be
building. Something-
required anyway, I believe. You can't leave that would lead to erosion, I think. Mike would know better, but you'd have to vegetate it.
As long as he didn't increase the nonconformity, it would be permittable. It would be permittable. So this was a proposal from the surveyor.
Okay.
So this 960 square feet was to accommodate his 960 square feet of garage.
Okay.
And then that's why he's here, because he's like, I'm not gonna tear that up, my whole hill's gonna wash it.
Right.
Okay, that's helpful. I didn't, so the proposal is not to remove the 960 square feet of pavement? Okay, okay. Ed, I guess, I'm not an engineer or anything, but you may want to ask, is there a way to safely remove it? And maybe there's not, but is there a way to safely remove and revegetate areas that are currently?
Do you guys have any plans to what are your plans to redo that area and make it so it wouldn't wash away if the pavement had to be removed? What can you guys do to?
It's a driveway.
It's a
where you're
driveway,
gonna
that's
enter
the
your
area
garage.
that will turn into our garage. You have to take a left off
Well, you'll
of
have
that
to correct
area.
it. So this pavement here is what you would have to take out for the garage.
Next to us a little bit.
And you can't put the garage just right here, huh? On the pavement that's already there, wouldn't we have an issue?
I wouldn't be able to get in
You have to
and
move
out
away
of my
from the wires,
driveway.
we'd be over the edge of the.
Oh,
Yeah,
then we'd be over the 100 foot.
You'd be moving closer to
You'd
the
be
water.
moving closer to the water,
Yeah, I get
closer
it.
to a huge embankment that goes
Right to the
down to
left.
my basement.
Encroaching on the septic.
So like, putting it, into here,
It's going to be too close to the wires and then
Yeah,
the wires.
the electrical wires right here.
Yeah, go up the other way.
Let's go this way.
Do you have any history to give us, Mark, as far as any prior stuff like this that's been granted or otherwise? Are we gonna have a flood of people that are going to be like, well, you let them go, so why can't you let us go?
Yeah, I think, I think it's reasonable for the board to take into consideration the fact that, like I was talking about before, that, a variance really is a modification of the zoning ordinance, and, the result of that could be additional requests before this board for, if it were granted. I think there's probably a lot of, property owners on the lake who would like to build a garage who don't currently have one. I guess the question for you really is that first criteria, is requiring the property to comply with zoning or to not increase it beyond where it's not complying currently, is that taking away, is that creating the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land? That's really what you need to figure out is, how important is that garage? Is that something that is integral to the property that, that without it, you can't really use the property? Just similar to, the cases that I was talking about where where it was upheld, where the property was not buildable without the setback variance, because the property owner, is basically on this corner, had to meet setbacks from two front setbacks. And, having the inability to build on a property made it essentially unmarketable. And so, there is a financial aspect to the reasonable return idea. And, even if there's not a present intent to sell the property or to market it, the idea, again, going back to eminent domain, even if you weren't planning to sell that property that's taken by the government to build a road, you're entitled to compensation of that property, because you're entitled to just compensation for your land. Similarly, with the variance, you're entitled to a reasonable return of your property, and if the property can't yield a reasonable return without a variance, then they meet that first criteria. But keeping in mind sort of the guidance that I talked about in terms of what that means in the eyes of the court, is whether really you've lost the beneficial use of the land for it.
Discuss now.
Yeah, I think we can stop. And then we can go for a motion.
Motion to close
So we're,
public, yeah.
so I'm gonna close public hearing.
Okay, but did you make a motion to close the public?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can probably just do it, but you might as well take a second on that and then just vote to close it, just to vote to close it, okay? 4-0, yeah, 4-0 to close it, okay. So the public hearing is closed, and now the board is entering into its deliberations stage.
My thoughts on it are it's going to improve the safety of the.
So you need to still project out, sorry,
Okay.
just so that everyone can hear.
I have-
If you, maybe the microphone, yeah, sorry.
I just have the thing about that, the safety of the lot, him being able to use the lot constructed better, not with the state regs that, he can park in his garage and get up to the level of his house, I think is a big plus for it, granting the hardship. It's just,
And sorry, I don't want to keep interrupting, but as you're going through deliberations, it may be helpful to go one criteria at a time.
Yeah,
And so,
that's what we're gonna do.
okay, so your comments were relevant to that criteria?
Yeah,
On the
to
reasonable
that, yeah,
return?
sorry.
Okay.
Reasonable return.
On the reasonable return was
It
the
slips in
safety?
and out.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure.
No, because, you have a lot that could be considered unsafe, the way it's used. I mean, we had his neighbor saying, have to drive his wife up to the house if the weather's bad. Well, the weather's kind of bad 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
So therefore, that becomes a pretty good size safety issue.
But are there other solutions to making
Well,
it
again,
safer?
you can put in iron steps, okay? I don't know if you've seen the cost of them, it'll cost as much as building them.
But I go back to the point of, is there a way to make this happen without having to change to get the variance? Is there a way to revegetate, resurface,
Sure,
whatever?
you could plant arborvitae's on top of the hill.
Right.
You've seen the growth of them things? They love water.
Those aren't.
So you're saying like
they aren't
mitigation?
What's that?
The one thing you need to keep in mind, if you're talking about replanting, revegetating, now you're going to require him to plant native vegetation, and
Well-
arborvitae's are not.
Maybe something on a road.
Blueberries, trust me, come over to my house, you can have as many as you want. But
I think my personal opinion on the return would be I feel like, I like this part about the keeping stuff safe with their sheds, you can put another, change the shed dynamics or move the shed over onto a paved road
Well,
that's already covered.
You could go down to sheds for us, and you can get a 20 by 30 shed.
Right, and you can put that on a part that's already paved, and that doesn't.
You know,
shed's
put it all here, you don't pave, well, because then you have to get a permit.
No, my point is that the pavement's already there, so he's only recovering, just trying to.
Yeah, but
You're
there's
not
people,
increasing
you
the
block in a driveway at that point.
Well, no, because you can put it here, but but my point is that there's other ways to do a lot of the things he's asking this garage to do, which would be the return, you know, I think that speaks to the return, but also, you know, as far as I just see, I see a lot of issues that we don't have to address, thank God, but I'm just also thinking that, you know, by opening this up and allowing this.
If we allow this, he's just gonna have to go in front of the planning board.
Well, he's got a lot more
They're gonna
steps.
say what size and all that having trash.
Right.
All we're giving them is the variance to add the 20 to 26%. Okay, it ain't gonna affect the lake, it ain't gonna affect anybody's, his neighbors, I don't think, are offended by the building. So I don't see any,
There wasn't any objection that
Right.
I heard.
Yeah.
so.
if there was, then somebody would read them in, right?
Well, just to be clear, the DEP's comments are part of the record, and they were opposed to
Well, they
the
oppose
application.
everything we do here.
I just want to make that clear for the record, that there was opposition from
Their
DEP.
opposition was DEP, not the neighbors.
Okay. And, you know, my personal thoughts, there's a lot of give on their part for their property, and it's not much to ask to have a little bit for themselves, so.
So as far as, but speaking on the return portion itself, like, you know, if we're just gonna stick with that one, like, what, you know, what's that return, you know what I mean?
As far as the return, well, the return's not falling on your butt down a hill would be one of them. Or somebody coming on the property that falls because of this issue where they'd have to go around on the road and him getting sued. That could be an issue.
I guess the
I mean-
hard part that I'm having with the return from a homeowner's perspective is, you know, the ice is still gonna be there, you're still gonna be able to use your garage. You're basically just using it for a fancy set of stairs, and I know that's not our thing to decide what to use the property for, but to give a variance for a building that is, you can't use, you know, 6 months out of the year, or 4 months out of the year is tough too, so.
Especially if it's a year-round property.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the first thing someone's gonna consider when
Yeah,
they look
living in
at
a
it.
garage, right. No, I think return on investment, no question, I absolutely 100%, like, you're definitely getting, you know, you go to resell the property, 100%, that's gonna give you, you know, definite return on investment, I see that.
Yeah, and I want to sort of steer the board towards, you know, the idea of what, whether and I think you should probably have some findings or some discussion on this point, is whether the strict compliance with the ordinance would result in the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land. And if so, what is that, you know, what's being lost? I mean, and I think you want to keep in mind, so the tenure of the ownership here, and, you know, the fact that it's been owned for 17 years without a variance. And so you kind of, you know, I think that's sort of where DEP was going with their comments, and so you want to address that in the event that there's an appeal from that body. You want to have some findings as to what's being lost, and what's needed sort of all of a sudden.
Well, you haven't been there 17 years, have you?
Yes.
You have.
Yeah, so 5.
Bought in 2000.
Oh, that's
2005, you said.
I'm sorry, West Virginia math, just terrible.
If you could have built the garage and done all your improvements to your house all at the same time the first year you moved there, would you have asked for the same variance then?
Yes.
Right.
And I couldn't afford it back then.
Or if he couldn't afford it, now he can't, you know.
Right.
You wanna?
Do I want what?
You wanna have your chance?
No, I'm listening, I'm just.
I'm interested to hear your perspective, though, that's all.
Well, I think the one thing that concerns me is that we're increasing the lot coverage from 22 to 26, and I don't know where that stops. I think we're setting a precedent for other people to come in and ask for the same variance, and then you're setting.
And that's where my head's at.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're already over, maybe by no fault of their own.
Right.
That's the part that I feel bad about, like somebody else has jacked them up over, 2% over to begin with.
Yeah. Or maybe that wasn't an ordinance when they did whatever the
Correct.
structures were, so.
But it's not their fault.
Right.
Yeah,
But at the same time, we go back to, it was paid when they bought it. Did they know this ordinance was in place? Was this in effect? I don't know what the ordinance, can you speak to the ordinance, Mark? Is that okay to ask you that? Like when this is 20%, a rule or a law?
Yeah, I think it was the 80s when shoreline zoning was
Been a while,
adopted
right?
with this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been
If you
30
have
to
a
40
little
years.
quarter, you'd let them hate it.
I mean, look at it this way, you buy a house that's, when it's contaminated with whatever, you're responsible for cleaning it at that point, you're kind of stuck with what you bought to a point. I agree, and that's where my head's at, I just don't, I mean, okay, so this is one, and, being the exception versus the rule.
But we don't want to make it the rule.
Correct, and these are rare, right, these cases are pretty rare.
Well, the difference is it's not a developer coming in front of us for this. It's a homeowner that's part of the community for 12 years. It's not some guy that flew in from Boston and then said, I want to do this to
So I
prove
can
it.
increase the value and
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a different.
I get that part too. I mean, I appreciate the safety portion of it.
You can't believe what you can get sued over these days.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Sure.
I don't know that your decision changes the ordinance. It still is going to be 20% coverage. It just
gives it less credibility.
Well, it doesn't give it less credibility. You're making a decision based on a particular piece of property and a particular hardship, not on what somebody else might do.
Right, so
You're
they're-
talking about
Yeah.
one person, their situation, and their hardship.
So, yeah, each one is case by case, so we'd have to hear another case.
So you think the beneficial.
We're not setting a precedent.
So go back to this beneficial use of land. Is there another way that he can use that land in the same way and create the same thing that he's trying to create? And I think the answer is yes, but.
Just to clarify, when you talk about beneficial use of the land, it's whether the land is usable at all.
Right.
Not
Which
whether
it is.
it's usable for this particular use.
Okay, good.
Because there have been situations where a lot was not buildable at all. They couldn't put a house on it, but the courts found that it could be used for recreation. It was adjacent to the house lot, so they could use it for waterfront access, a picnic table, that kind of thing. So even though the lot wasn't buildable, they wanted to build on it, but the variance was denied because they said there's not the practical loss of beneficial use because you can do recreation on it. So keep in mind that when you talk about the loss of use, it's not the loss of the use that he'd like to make of it, it's the loss of any use at all, okay? And so it's currently a single-family house, using the property.
So we could also
There's currently no
agree
use
that he's using 22 now, he's limited to 22, he has to figure
Well,
out.
by the same token, the other people that have garages on a paved lot couldn't maybe, shouldn't have them. The law's been in since the 80s. There's, what I'm saying, there's other homes that have garages like that.
Correct, but may have more land and less pavement.
I doubt it.
It may not have two driveways running through it.
That's my point, that's what I mean when I say less pavement, I mean, he's got those right-of-ways, which,
Yeah, and that's not,
That's undue.
that's an undue hardship right
It's one of those
there.
things where, you bought the land like that, not knowing, obviously, I'm assuming you didn't know that you couldn't put a little garage up there when you bought the
Yeah.
land, so.
Right.
You could also say that when he put his pavers in, which are now counting for that,
Yeah.
They should have been.
Waterboro passed that, and now it's working against him. That's an undue hardship.
What was that percentage
That was
on those pavers?
very recent.
3% or something. Wasn't it?
Did sorry to interrupt you, did the board have clarity on the question of whether there could be other pervious areas removed and revegetated in order to allow for the
You're saying
960?
like blocks and,
Patios, things like that.
Yeah.
I think you want to have clarity about that, because I think you do want to know, are there reasonable alternatives to a variance? Because that's what you're being asked. You're basically, the representation is that there's no other choice, that this is the last resort for the property owner. And so if there are other avenues to pursue,
Okay.
you want to make sure that you've sort of,
can we direct a question
Just
to
to
Michael?
be clear, the variance is, the 22%
You've
is
seen the
already
property.
there.
22% is already there, but he doesn't need a variance to get
You've seen the
to
property.
that.
Yes.
Is there anything they could take out and replant?
A couple of small items would be sheds, other small structures. As far as replanting, it's difficult, it's tough to say.
You come up with 1%.
And those sheds are included in the 22%?
Correct.
Yeah, which will both be
Yeah.
removed.
So if you.
I
So
can remove
how much square foot are those sheds gonna give us, just out of
Well,
curiosity?
the shed that I own is an 8x8, so that's 64. And then this other shed is my neighbor's, and that's supposed to be gone tomorrow, which
Was
is,
that included in that 22% as well?
Yes.
Oh, it was.
yeah, so that's 40 square feet.
But then the driveway portions, you know, does it make sense, I guess that's a good question for you, does it make sense to look at the lot coverage that's incurred by the driveway portion on their lot?
Point out what you're talking about.
This portion here, the driveway portion that doesn't belong to them, and doesn't access them, that they didn't create.
Well, it's still part of their lot coverage.
Understood, but does it
But how
make
many
sense,
square
does it make
feet
sense to
or
get a calculation for that if we're looking to trying to offset?
We don't
For the
know the
20%.
individuals on their own.
Because that
Because
should-
how long
Can
has
you
that
guys tell us
driveway
the
been
track-
there?
Can you guys tell us the square
How
footage?
long
of
has that
any of those
driveway been there, whether it was
driveways?
pavement or not, it was still, it's very likely that that driveway has been there prior to the shoreline zoning.
Lehman's driveway is 1,925 square feet.
You know, the part that
I
runs
don't know
through
where
your house,
that gets.
That's
anyway.
what percentage
Discount some of the lot coverage.
of your overage is that?
4.9%.
They do approve.
Okay, so that's about 5. So 5, you got 6% if they got the
Justify,
plans.
Yeah.
That would be under the 20%.
Hey, Mark, can we make,
So how do you do that, you know?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And
Mark, I
make it
got a
fine.
legal question for you.
Sure,
real quick.
yeah.
So this 1,900 square feet that is Mr. Lehman's driveway,
Mhm.
is that, do we have to count that in our calculation?
I believe so. I mean, the ordinance requirement for 20% is 20% regardless of how that pervious area got there. It's just, because the idea is that you don't want to cover up too much of a lot because it's bad for the water, right? You don't want to have too much paved area because the water rushes down the pavement right into the water. So that's the reason. It doesn't, in the eyes of science and, you know, nature, they don't care whether it was already there or whose it was or whatever. So it's whether the lot is covered 20% or more, and so I think you would have to consider that. Whether there's other areas that could be removed, this 960 square feet removed and revegetated, they said that they, or the applicant said that he wanted to not do that. But if that would be an option to get you the 960 that you need for the garage, then maybe that's something to consider, in addition to the shed and the other shed that will be removed anyway. And so, you know, your point of, you know, you're entitled to grant an easement or not, whatever, but if you were to grant an easement, you can grant it to the extent that you think is reasonable. And so I think, to get to your point before, what you're saying is that you would be comfortable maybe granting it to a certain extent, maybe not the full extent, and that's certainly permissible. And then, you know, the applicant could decide if he wants to appeal that or to, you know, to challenge that, you know, what was granted to him. And then, you know, the question would be, you know, that would sort of play into the question of, you know, how big of a garage is really, you know, necessary. You know, do you need a 960 square foot garage, or, you know, if you sort of put the parameter on there, then maybe that can be worked around by the applicant. So something to consider.
Would that be the board or the planning board's decision how big, or ours?
Really, it's yours, because you're deciding how much of the lot can be covered, right? The planning board can't grant a variance. It's only this board that can grant a variance. So
I think to justify your point, right, to go into the 26 seems like a big number when we're thinking about it, not variance, but I think when we start adding in the factor that he had no control over
A bunch of
two of them, I'm more concerned about the two driveway portions. You know, we give him a little bit of leeway there, but I still don't see 26 years.
If you took out the two sheds, and then you reduce the size of the garage, can we keep it at the 22?
It's probably wider than that.
Well, you're gonna look at some of the.
Was it 24 by 26? No, if he went to 26 feet.
Right.
Boy, you're good at math.
Yeah, I know. 624.
624. Because that would still give him the up and over, be able to push it to the side. Well, I think
Right. So
average truck is 8 feet. So 16 feet's enough for two. It was on the side.
Can I address, Mr. Chair? So right at the end, I don't know if you can see this or not, but right at the end of my driveway, my pavement ends where the surveyor suggested removing the pavement. Well, the pavement does end there, but then off of that, the surveyor is including that additional driveway area over to my neighbors as coverage area, because there's reclaim there. So I would propose planting grass in that area to reduce the coverage also.
Oh, so that could be removed as well?
Huh?
That could be removed as well?
That could be removed.
Oh,
You know
and do,
approximately how many square feet that is by chance?
That's probably about 500 square feet.
Because it's 35.9 feet, it says, right?
Yeah, and it's probably
Times-
about 15 feet wide. It's probably 12 to 15 feet wide.
That's half the garage.
so it's so there's 960 that can be removed, on the, shown on the survey. I think he said another 500 with the
No,
part that's reclaim.
We're trying not to remove that 960. That's pavement right now,
Sure, but it's possible to remove it, right?
causing erosion, yes.
If it's revegetated, it would be erosion?
I won't be able to drive my garage.
Okay, so I guess you want to find out what he's willing to do, right? And, if it's not removing the pavement as his exhibit shows,
So basically,
you need to know what it is.
500 square feet where the grass is.
There's no grass there now, but.
No.
Yeah, I would plant grass
Correct,
at about
right,
500
correct.
square feet.
So that's 500 square feet, which
In
makes,
addition to the shed.
what's that make for
It-
its percentage?
585.
Yeah.
Well, then there's 104 square feet from the sheds, right?
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
604 square feet.
So we're,
Plus
we're
another
not gonna
6,
really.
40 or 60, what was the other one for the other building?
40, yeah.
We have that.
So that's 682.
So you're talking about 300 feet. Which would percent 300?
300 would be about, what, 0.8%?
To add on
I
to
mean,
this.
literally, at that point, I think we could probably say 23% you'd be covered.
Yeah.
Except for we have to push back the garage into the hill further to be off of that easement.
So at that point, then,
25.
at that point, I think we're gonna be talking about, if you narrow the garage, then you're not taking out as much. Instead of 36-foot garage, you put in 26-foot, do 26 by 26, and then that shrinks what you need all the way around. You don't need as much pavement out front, you don't need as much vegetation taken out, you could shrink that down too. And that's probably not the ideal situation. I know you want the bigger garage. Is that gonna be a 3-car? Is that my assumption?
It's a 3-car
So,
garage, yeah.
If you went 30 feet, that would probably be enough.
Yeah, so 4 times, well, that's only gonna be another 100.
Yeah, I guess you would want to find out, is there a reason why he needs to have a 3-car garage?
Yeah,
Because, I mean, keep in mind that, he's coming to you as a request to change, what the zoning requirements are, because to demonstrate a need for that. And if it's possible to meet the need with a 24-foot wide garage, if 36 feet is 3-car, 24 feet, I assume, would be 2-car. I have a 1-car garage in my house, so that I use for storage. So, that's something for the board to consider. You remember, you're required to only grant a variance to the greatest extent to eliminate the takings issue. So if that could be accomplished through a smaller garage, in your view, then that's perfectly permissible for you to do, and then to calculate the percentage from that.
Let's use it as 30 feet, that gives you a little shot.
I've proposed a 3-car garage because I need a 3-car garage.
You do need,
We have 4 vehicles right now, and my daughter is gonna get her license next year, so she'll probably end up getting herself a car too. So 3-car garage is, my wife has a car, I have a commuting car, and then I have a plow truck. So I wanna be able to at least have a garage for those 3 vehicles.
So let me just do this math with you, right? So now we're at a 26-foot depth, which is a typical garage, we all know that, right?
Yeah.
So by 36, but now you gotta put it back 10 feet. right? So now we're at 36 by 36 essentially is what you're looking at to take over for land there, correct?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're clear on the numbers. So that's going to be 1,300-ish square feet. Taking out all the stuff that you have given us so far, the extra land at the end of the end of, you're going to replant vegetation, stuff that's growing here, around at that end, which would be the 538, another 104 was the sheds, and then the 40 for that other building that's getting taken down as we speak, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And then there's another 100 somewhere else, but I don't know where.
Do you get the replanting of the grass?
Well, yeah, that was this year.
Okay.
So that was a 682, so you're,
I think somebody
You're at about
needs to go up and measure it for you guys.
614 square feet is kind of what we would need to add, which would be, I had to figure out, how much was your garage? So you're talking about 2/3, like 1.4% is what you would need above and beyond, is where we're at.
Above and beyond.
So we need to
where
be
we
at
are.
23.4 for you to do a 36 by, the 26 by 36 garage would be like 23.4.
That's a little too specific.
I know, but I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
where the numbers are, so we gotta get padding either way, or we gotta give a little, I mean, I understand, you know, a three-car garage is a nice luxury, right? And it's a, you know, we're not taking away the piece of land, we're not saying you can't use it, you're still gonna have your safety measures in a two-car, we're still gonna accomplish a lot, you're still gonna have a parking area up above if you need to on the grass, where a plow truck could park or whatever. You know, there's things, you know, because if we take and shrink that by 10 feet, now we're 10 by 36, it's now 360 feet, you could just about get that done at 23%. So we could give him a variance for 1%, you can still get everything done by vegetating what needs to be done, he gets a 10-foot setback, he has parking underneath, he has everything he needs.
Well, you said 1%.
Three-car garage.
Play it safe, too.
I wasn't sure.
Are
you shrinking the size
If he
of the
doesn't use it,
garage?
he doesn't use it.
Are you proposing to make the garage smaller?
No, he was going with this, with the same.
That one,
36
yes, I'm
foot.
sorry, that one was a smaller garage.
Oh, that was?
Yeah.
So to do the other one would be 6.
Plus you lose square footage with the stairwell within the garage, so.
Really what we need from them is what they're asking. So what they're asking,
They asked for 26.
they want
Is
26.
what you correct, isn't that what you guys have said? And that's, I mean, at 26, that's getting your cake and eating it too. You got your pavement, you got your reclaim, you got your building, you got everything, right? That's the Taj Mahal model. That's what I would call it. That's, you're getting everything, they're getting everything they want at 26.
Well, yeah, but he was given back too, so you think of it like a trade. He's taken the land that he's gonna replant and the land he's gonna regrass
That
and
didn't include
sheds.
that.
Right, so if,
But that, but now we can
We are
let it
including that.
include that. That's what we're saying.
So are we at 25?
so that would reduce it to 25.
So that's what the number.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? If you were to have gravel, whether that's loam and seed, which I'm not speaking of loam and seed, to be gravel, like bank run gravel for a driveway, and there's grass growing in that driveway, is that vegetated? Because according to Steve Everett, it is.
If it's constant, if it maintains the vegetation, the strip down the middle without the two, in between your two tires, you could potentially count as vegetated area.
Gotcha.
If you mow it, it's vegetated area.
When pavement is applied to a piece of property, do I need a permit from you for that?
Nope.
Okay.
Therein lies the problem.
I could remove my driveway and plant it.
So are we still on the first criteria?
I think we're kind of
Okay.
combining a lot of stuff right now. And
Okay, but we got to be clear that we're going through one by one on the criteria and voting up or down on each one.
Read
And
off the first
All right,
question.
the landing question cannot yield a responsible return unless a variance is granted. Does the applicant answer or satisfy the question?
What do you call it?
So you want a motion to?
Motion, yeah. A motion that we, well, this is great. Answer the question, or
well,
Criteria.
yeah,
does it meet the criteria? That's it.
right.
Meets the criteria.
Yes, does it meet the criteria?
So you're making a motion that it meets the criteria?
Well, that we vote on it.
So you make a motion one way or the other that it meets it or does not meet it?
Oh, I motion that it meets it.
Okay, so you have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
It's just for voting purposes.
And once you have a motion second, then you can discuss.
Motion is or whatever.
Can you reread the
Sure.
first one, please?
The first one is that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted.
I mean, the criteria, so like, is that what you're
No,
asking?
no, that was what I mean.
That was the criteria.
I'll second the motion so we can chat about it.
Okay, so there's a motion and second on the table, okay. So now, I mean, you already have done some discussion, but the discussion is whether to, and you ultimately will vote on this. And the question is whether there's a reasonable return without the variance or not. And I think there was some discussion about, so this is where you would probably get into sort of,
Quality of life.
if the answer is no, that there's not a reasonable return without a variance, what would we be willing to allow, kind of thing, to make that? If the answer is that, yes, that the land can yield a reasonable return without a variance, then you don't need to get into the percentages.
So again, to go back to the variance is being asked, so we're just trying to verify if the variance should be I'm talking to myself all the time.
So the motion, just to clarify, the motion was to find that the applicant has met the criteria that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return. So that was in the affirmative that he's met that. There was a second, so now you're sort of debating that motion, yes or no, and then you ultimately will vote on it. And then after you vote yes or no, then you can sort of discuss, if the answer is yes, then you can discuss what level of a variance you're willing to give. And it doesn't have to be the full amount that's been requested. But you first want to reach the question of, does the application meet the criteria or not? Once you answer that question, then you can get into the part about the percentages. So I think we sort of put the cart before the horse before a little bit.
So I'd say the variance definitely restricts the use of that land, or without the variance, I'd say the land is fairly restricted.
Correct.
Correct. Which obviously is why we're here. But,
So I mean, we vote yes or no.
Right.
So each of us will vote, and then we have to determine what
First we have a discussion. You're discussing right now the motion, which is that the applicant meets that first criteria. There was a second. Now you're sort of just deliberating as to what your thoughts are about it, and then you'll hold a vote on this first one.
I think there's some thoughts on putting green areas back and stuff.
But basically we just got to figure out right now, do you think that it needs the variance to be useful land versus?
Yes, it does.
That's the conversation. We can set the restrictions afterwards. If we think the variance should be granted, but with heavy restrictions or at a higher level, we can do that later. Is that my
You can grant a variance with conditions on it. So you could condition the grant of the variance on him performing certain things on the property. That's correct.
Are we ready to vote?
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So the way I'm reading it is that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return. Are we talking about just that section where he wants to put the garage, or the entire lot that he owns?
The entire lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be the entire lot. Because I think, as he stated in his thing, reasonable, obviously prices are very high right now for all of those properties.
So just to answer your question, Deborah, to put it a different way, if you deny the variance, are you basically denying the use of that lot? Because you're saying it's a lot as a whole. You're not looking at just that section where he wants to put the garage. It's the whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you find this criteria has been met, then you're finding that there's no use of that property without a variance.
No reasonable return.
Actually, no reasonable return. It's been used by him for 17 years.
And it's not going to change if we don't.
But he's asking for a hardship variance, so it's.
But what's the hardships? Like, what is it to you that, and I'm just asking
No,
you,
yeah.
because I want to know from your opinion, what is the hardship here for you?
Having other houses with garages makes his property less valuable. And from a usable perspective, and living where we live, it's not unreasonable to want a garage.
Right,
Because
but
of
I don't
weather.
think that it changes the use of the property.
The usefulness of the property still exists, he still is gonna live there, whether he has a garage or not.
Exactly.
He's still gonna have to, trudge up and down a terrible driveway, whether he gets a garage or not. Those are all things that are gonna happen. Is there other use in, it's wooded, it looks like, it doesn't look like there's trails and stuff up in there, obviously, because it goes right to the north shore, but, it's obviously gonna add value to the house, no question about it, but that goes back to our conversation earlier of maximum value versus.
Maybe comparatives, right?
It also,
It's not
Yeah,
increasing, it's not building a.
It's not like he's building a garage that nobody else in the area has.
also too, you have to ask yourself a quality of life issue.
Oh, I love my garage, don't get me wrong.
No, no. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it'd be nice to know your car's warm in the morning.
Yeah, but that's not the question.
That's not the question.
But it's what you can read into it.
But
Actually, I think if you look by definition, you're only talking about dollars right now. And by definition, from the state of Maine, that very rule is everything that you're talking about.
Yeah, and we're talking about the safety and security and the
It
shed,
It should be-
part.
it should be
if you
keeping
read
your
it
car covered from
verbatim,
hail damage.
You would basically only be able to park your canoe on your property. Because then you could use the lake.
It doesn't have to be undue hardship that if Mark doesn't get this garage, he lives underneath an umbrella with no food or water. It is the fact
I was just
that
interested to hear your.
Mark will have
your-
cars.
I like hearing everybody's opinion.
You are in your deliberations now. You're free to ask the applicant any questions, but, this is your time to discuss without the applicant interjecting, okay?
You may think about it, everybody else got one. It's like one of the
Not
things,
necessarily.
If we had anybody in here objecting to that, would be another
So that's
matter.
another matter. Right.
We got the state,
Just out of
like
curiosity,
literally,
were
I've been on
neighbors
this for
Were
quite a
neighbors
few years.
notified?
Yes. all
And
the
they
neighbors
object to
are-
everyone.
Within
It
200
makes no
within
difference.
250
They got some
feet.
environmental nut that's gonna object.
All the butters are notified by certified mail.
Yeah, then what I'm saying is, the state,
Even
they
more
always
so.
object.
Even more so, every neighbor within 250 feet of our property is notified.
Right. Because I sent it out.
Some of them are not abutters.
An abutter isn't just anybody, an abutter is considered outside of, not just up against you. So anybody within 500 feet of your proposed project has to be notified.
Is that this list here that you sent out?
Yes.
So there's a ton of people that are notified.
Yes, there were a ton of people notified and the only feedback we received.
And he's taken precautions as far as like mitigation for erosion.
But I think it's just important that we continue that, to make that a
Continue.
make that a restriction.
Yeah, right, yeah.
No, about the grass and all that, yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So
I'm good with it.
Like, yeah.
So before we get to conditions, let's just finish up on the first criteria. The rationale I think that I've heard so far is, because again, I'm going to be preparing the written decision, that everyone else nearby has one, nobody's objecting, he'll continue to be, or to the usability of the property, I guess, and that it will make his house less valuable to not have one because other people have. Is that the general?
Yeah, it's not gonna be an eyesore, he's gonna make it look like the other ones,
And there's a safety thing.
for his wife and him. It's
Yeah,
not-
that's what I said with usability. Okay, so yeah, usability, safety. Okay. So I think it's probably appropriate to take a vote on the first criterion then.
Okay, so take a vote.
Should we take a vote on the first?
So you say all in favor.
All in favor?
Of letting him have it?
Well, the motion on the floor, is for the first criteria. The motion that you made was that he meets that. There was a second, so that a yes vote will be that he met it, a no vote will be he don't.
Okay.
So you say all in favor?
All in favor?
I'm voting.
Yes?
I'm an aye.
Couldn't tie it out anyway.
Then all opposed? Say all opposed.
All opposed.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2-2, all right.
So he loses.
Well, we got to go through the rest of, we got to go through all of them, so the second criteria is, yeah, go ahead, sorry, yeah.
Is the need for a variance due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood? I motion that he meets this criteria.
Second.
Mark?
Now you have to take the, all in favor.
So we're gonna, all in favor?
Have approved the
of-
first one with changing the percentage?
The
Yes.
percentage didn't have anything to do with
Or
with whether
say-
you met the criteria or not. The percentage would come into play, sort of secondary to whether you can get a reasonable return without a variance. So that was what I was trying to explain before.
Okay.
Sorry, did you have was there a vote on the second one yet?
Not yet.
Okay, okay.
So we're going to vote yes or no on the variance is due to, is it due to unique?
You guys, you motion and second, and you just discuss.
Yeah,
it.
so like, we can just, yeah, we can just.
We need to vote.
I think this one, I think he's definitely got a unique
Yeah, because
circumstance
of
with
the
the pavement
driveways.
and the driveways and all that stuff.
I would guess
just wanted to
it's
see
4-4.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
4,
So
4-0.
all in favor of that, that meets
Aye.
that criteria? Aye. So number 3, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. Does the applicant satisfy the question? So
I'll make a motion to pass that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just a second.
I'll second.
The only discussion we have on that is as long as that's definitely going to be a single, never going to be a in-law apartment, I know we said
Right.
that, but I just think that that's something we should
Yeah.
possibly put in there.
Yeah.
It would never happen, right?
No, 2000, like the LD 2003 that's in for the secondary homes, that is exempt for shoreline zoning, meaning anything within 250 feet, you're not allowed to have a
Multifamily.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So I want to go with that. Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, all in favor?
I didn't hear what you said.
Number 4, the hardship is not the fault or action taken by the applicant or prior owner. Does the applicant answer this or satisfy the question? I motion that he meets this criteria, that it's not fault of the owner of the property.
Second.
Discussion.
I just have a hard time understanding the 3 surrounding neighbors modified it without his permission when they have permission to modify that land as it's their easement, as it's their right of way.
Right.
And they didn't modify or add or change anything, they just resurfaced what was already surfaced,
Right.
from what I've heard.
So it didn't change it?
Yeah, so I have a hard time seeing that hardship as well. On this, based on this, I think there's other hardships that you probably would have a better point on, but the 3 surrounding neighbors, I didn't.
There's only one hardship issue, that was the first question.
No, the hardship question is one more on that.
So
Reasonable return.
where you consider about whether it's self-created, whether the
Right.
actions of the owner or the applicant or prior owner sort of led to the need for a variance on this one.
So he didn't do it, but it was kind of there, it seems like it was built into the property. So, I mean, I guess, in
But I
that,
didn't
in that
do
as the DEP kind of, or whoever allowed them to pave, or
But the question is, did I do it? And I did not do it.
a prior owner. It says.
No, me.
No, it says or
No, it
prior
says
owner.
prior owner.
Literally says
Okay.
that,
All
prior
right.
owner. Those are your words.
Okay.
It says right on there, the hardship is no result or action taken by the applicant or prior owners. So,
No, I know. I know it doesn't matter. There's no penalty for paving either.
For what?
For paving.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
I don't. Fellas.
So we'll take a vote, I guess, on number 4. Too many guys. All in favor?
For the hardship. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say
Yeah.
it, 'cause I
Yeah.
truly don't think you
Yeah.
knew.
So the reasoning on that one was that it was actions taken by other property owners other than
And or prior owner.
the applicant or prior
He
owner.
would have known about prior.
Right.
Right, but even if it, again, the criteria is that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner, meaning of that property. So it sounds like what you're saying is that there are actions taken by other people who,
Other
other owners that were surrounding this property
Right.
that was causing, okay, so that's the reason for the vote, okay. So it's 4-0 on that. So you voted on the 4 criteria. The next step would be do a final vote on the ultimate question of whether to grant the variance or not. And that would be dictated by, the 4 criteria before, because obviously in order to grant a variance, you have to meet all 4 of these. The first one was a 2-2 tie, and so that one, a tie vote does not move the question. So the motion on that one would have failed. The other 3 did pass 4-0. But I guess before doing a final vote on the variance itself, my practice usually is to have a written decision, prepared for your consideration at the next meeting, at which time you would take the final vote as to whether to grant the variance or not, and then whether to adopt the written decision. The reason for that is that if you take the final vote tonight, the statute requires you to adopt a written decision within 7 days. Obviously, 7 days from now is we got the holidays and stuff. So my thought would be, I can prepare a written decision based on the feedback and the input that you provided at this meeting, get it to you, in advance of the meeting so you can have time to review it, get it to the applicant so that he can review it as well. And at the next meeting, review the decision and then take the final vote on it, if that's agreeable to you all. I can certainly, work to do it in the next 7 days if you would like, but it would make it, I think, a better decision probably if we had a little more time.
If, let's say that we voted to give the variance, it won't carry through because of the tie vote, correct?
Yeah, and that's why I said your vote on the final, as to whether to grant the variance or not is sort of, dictated by those 4 votes already. So, for example, if 1 or 2 of the criteria don't pass, the ultimate answer, really by default needs to be that the variance is not granted because it hasn't met all 4 of those. So that's why you vote on each one separately, because if you just were to vote on the overall question without the individual, for one, the applicant doesn't know what the reasoning for a yes or no vote was, whereas if you break it down, then it's a little bit more clear that you approved these 3, but on this one there was a tie, so it didn't go through. So that's the reasoning for that. So if again, it's the board's choice as to how to proceed from here. My recommendation would be to table this until the next meeting, where you would consider a written decision and then the ultimate decision on the question of the variance at that time, or you could proceed within 7 days.
I vote we table this
Or
until
you
the next meeting.
make a motion.
Make a motion, I'm
to
sorry.
table. Okay.
You have no control at this point.
Mark, just to
Yes.
clarify, now these guys have had a lot of information, and I'm doing it just because you've got, a new board. These guys have had a lot of information thrown at them, a lot of numbers thrown around, different options for this and that. Everything else passed, but as they go, they're home, looking through their information, you come back with a written, written determination.
Can we amend that later?
Then you could go back and say, you know what, I feel like we need to re-look at number 1.
Could I was thinking we make a continuation and have another meeting
That's
present.
rather than tabling it.
Yes, I'd like to.
Continue,
have
okay.
A continued meeting and come back with more detailed numbers and,
We can certainly do that, and I can have the written decision
over-
as I understand it so far. Because, like I said before, the percentage really, on the first one, you have to decide whether or not, he can have a reasonable return without a variance. And it sort of seemed like 2 of you were of the mind and 2 of you were not. And
Can we
so,
ask for them to bring some information to the next meeting?
Sure,
to help with
yeah.
that
would that,
decision?
would you be okay with that? Coming back and
Yes,
presenting, just that, we'll focus on that one question.
on the reasonable
Yep.
return question.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good idea if it focuses the inquiry a little bit more, and in the meantime, I can at least begin the written decision so that, we're not having a third meeting on this. I don't think you want to, drag this out too far, but I can prepare a written decision based on my understanding of where the board is, at least currently, given the votes on the floor tonight, so.
Would you be opposed to having us drive down there at some point just to take a physical look at it, or no?
We can meet you there.
Yeah. I mean, I just.
Is it possible to schedule
I
now
can
so we
set that up
Yeah.
as a.
then you don't have to notice, yeah.
Well, if I just,
We can do that.
one at a time, we can't just roll through.
I don't know, you would have to ask.
It's actually.
They want to know if they can visit the site one
Can
at
they
a
do a
time.
site,
Yeah.
now that they have
So-
started the process, can they schedule a site walk to go visit the site? Or should that have been?
I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't think they can.
What,
I
first
think-
week
I
of
think-
January,
I just-
you're gonna have everybody
the book
in
that
the house
came from the-
slide down over the hill?
Well, if we had a garage, it'd be easy.
Like, the book that came from the state originally, this is going back a few years, said that we weren't supposed to have knowledge of
Well,
the site.
I guess here's the question, is if it would play in somehow to your analysis of whether the property meets that first criteria, so that, again, whether it can yield a reasonable return, that whole thing, whether there's a practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land, if that would be aided in some way by a site visit, you've not taken made a decision yet. The problem is you have to notice that. That will have to be noticed to all abutters, because that's a public meeting. So a site
Yeah.
visit is still a public meeting. It would also probably push back, I don't know that you could do that and the meeting sort of simultaneously. It would obviously have to be during the daylight hours, not,
Right.
so it does have some.
Maybe this is,
It's-
I just thought I'd ask.
It's your prerogative as the board if you want to have a view of the property to do so, but.
I'm gonna go see Mr.
But yeah, it
Quinn.
has to be as a, I know
Certainly
that.
pop in if you'd like to.
If you look at
To
the,
be open to the.
I think it was the white binder that the town gave me.
My card
Right.
gets a little
It has that, we're not supposed to go by and look at the sites.
Yeah, no, it's always my advice not to do what they call a drive-by site visit. We've had a case once where there was an application and some of the board members did a drive-by site visit and they went to the wrong property. So, it's supposed to be part of the process, and when it's part of the process, it's supposed to be, the applicant is entitled to be there, the public is entitled to notice of it and able to be present at the site visit as well. And because it's really part and parcel of the whole proceeding. So that's why a drive-by site visit is not recommended, because also it's not fair to the applicant. He may, you may see something that is out of place or not quite right or something,
Well, yeah.
and he doesn't have a chance to.
You could be threatened by a neighbor that doesn't want it.
Oh, that's happened before too. That's happened for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It'd be him.
We had a court case once that involved what a paper street is, where a street
Yeah.
down to the water, and the plaintiff in the case argued that there was no reason why this road couldn't be used, and as the judge wanted to visit the property, the judge went down, and the neighbor didn't know that was a judge, and he came out and was yelling "holy hell" at this judge, and so the judge was saying, "I don't know this is a reasonable access down to the water because based on my experience." So that can sometimes backfire, yeah.
No, but if that's okay, in agreement with you, to come back with that.
So you're relooking at question number one?
Question number
Yeah.
one.
Well, I guess-
Where was a typo and then how everything else passed. It would give it
Okay.
a more understanding for us to go over it.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, may I
To be
speak?
fair. Yep.
One of the things on this application, for everyone that I've been on, is people don't understand reasonable return. The general public think of reasonable return as return on investment, so they're not thinking when they fill out the application of what you're really asking for. So I think that's a big problem, the way that's worded, and I don't know if that can be changed or if it's written by the state, but or maybe you just write at the last line, it is not return on investment.
Nobody
Because
cat, right?
reasonable return to most people is going to be financial. And I think that's how Mark answered it. So because I couldn't talk to him.
Yeah,
And
no,
then this, I knew this was in, I'm not allowed to talk to him, so
fair.
I couldn't tell him that piece, so.
I would assume that the very word
You can
reasonable
continue this
leaves
meeting.
that
Yes.
open.
Yeah, I think you just give a jabber here now, but continue it, but you need to put a date on it.
Yeah.
Right, so like, we'll
I
schedule.
think Gabriel's already got a calendar. I'm
Yeah.
looking at
I
it.
do, I do.
Let's do
I
that.
just want to move your own.
I hate to really say this, but we may have to look at Fridays, because I'll be working Monday through Thursday in Tilton, New Hampshire for a while.
That's one of five.
We need 3 people.
Hey, I hate that, but, you know,
For
me too.
You need
We'd
3
only
people
need
for a
three
quorum, that's
members.
correct.
So, how fast are we gonna get a turnaround on Steve? That's my question.
On who?
Steve,
Any
well,
update?
we don't even know if she's gonna, if they're willing to do that, they'd have Steve go back and give them some numbers and track the,
Well-
like, to verify exact numbers for the reclaimed area, things like that, if you're going to take that into consideration at your next meeting. That's, I think, is important, of what type of information you need to convey
think it
to
would.
the applicant. What is it that we're looking for that would work well in your?
Mark, you need at least a week, right?
Me? Are you talking about me? Okay. Yes. I could, I mean, if you, were you looking at next week sometime?
I'm looking at 27, 28, 29. Mike is on vacation the first week of January, so that would kick us to the second week of January.
Do I need to be here?
Yeah, you're required.
I think the only date of next week that I have free is the 29th, I'm assuming you're not looking at the 30th Friday.
No, I'm
So
looking
the
at the
Thursday, the
30th.
29th would be the only
Probably
one
gonna be out of state on this.
available for me
I'd like to see
at this
you guys.
point, so.
He's gonna be gone one.
But I could see if Natalie could cover it, because if she's not typically occupied on a Thursday, but she hasn't been seeing the whole thing, so.
So, in order, Steve Everett, who's the surveyor, who gives us these percentages, 2 things. Steve costs money, right, to go back out and give us more percentages, so Steve costs money, so that's something for Mark to think about. It's also true that no matter what percentage Steve gives you, that we can create to make something different than we presented today with a different percentage, any percentage we give you is going to be over the 20% which you're ruling on, which is not defined in any answer the way you're going to answer question number 1. You either are going to grant a variance, doesn't matter how much percentage you want to give us, you would be granting a variance. Doesn't matter how much the percentage is. So we don't really need to have Steve there unless you say, we would if. And if, then it would make sense to have the surveyor come up with another logical. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mark, does that make sense?
I don't really get the point, to be honest.
The point
But
is, they
their
have to get
first
the
question
survey
is-
done before the vote.
Well, it may, I mean, I don't know whether it's going to change the mind of the 2 who voted no, but if it does, they will want to know what the percentage is that they're willing to agree to.
But we discussed that we could potentially
So-
do that, right?
Potential.
I think
There's
my
potential.
stuff was more based on like, you know,
I mean, there's a threshold question first, which I think your analysis was proper, that you first consider whether there's a reasonable return and all of the guidance from the courts that underlie that. And then the next question is if you do find that there's no reasonable return without a variance, then you decide, well, what level of variance is appropriate if there's no reasonable return?
I think we came down to 25 was the,
Well,
what we.
there was a 2-2 vote, so you didn't get there yet, so I guess.
Everyone has to vote yes on the first
They
question
didn't allow them
before
to.
you can move
Right,
forward.
so you need to get past the question of whether there's a reasonable return first in order to get to the percentage question.
Right. That's what I was.
Yeah.
and that's
what we're at.
So you need a date and a time.
What you want to read?
See, I thought-
So can you re-vote if you
Well,
just
no,
said you were
I thought we were
confused?
gonna continue this tonight and finish the vote.
You thought that you could vote.
That's the other.
Because you voted that
So-
There's a change.
Can he reasonably expect for it?
Because you voted that down, you can't
evaluating,
propose
we can't
a percent.
revote. Are we revoting on number one, or are we not? allowed to
You,
revote?
you can reconsider it. You can consider a motion to reconsider that first criteria if someone who voted in the affirmative, wants to reconsider it, and change their vote. So that's a possibility. And so that's, I think, the point is to, to allow a little more time to, sort of think about that, and for me to come up with a written decision based on, your analysis thus far.
I think because of the tie vote, that's where we're at. If it was swayed, differently, then.
Yeah, I think if you had gotten, if there had been a majority vote in favor of that criteria, that first one, then you would move to the question of, well, what level of a variance, after you get through the rest of the criteria, which you did 4-0. So that's the point I was trying to make, is that when you're deciding what you're going to grant, the ultimate motion would be either I move to deny their application, or I move to grant a variance of X. And X is what percentage you're talking about. So you only get to that point if you've already found that the 4 criteria have been met. Okay.
But they can motion for reconsideration right now.
I'm
And
motioning
just
for a
in
reconsideration.
revote on the first test.
We'll be here all night, I'm sure.
Go where you are.
I thought there was already a motion to continue. I mean,
Yes,
you
right, there is a-
can reconsider it the
So
next meeting.
I don't think the motion continued was second, was it?
That's what I'm wondering.
I don't
I don't think we ever got there. That was the
You
problem.
had the motion to continue to the meeting to December, but there was no second, it just kind of.
Yeah.
It fizzled.
So there needs to be a second and a vote on that motion to continue.
I second the motion.
Okay, so, but we have to have a date to, so the motion has to be, I move to continue the meeting to the following date, following time.
Which is where we got lost, because we're trying to figure out what we need
Right.
for that following day.
Right. So I'm looking at the week of the 27th, 28th, 29th.
Of
We are
December.
closed the 26th
Or January.
of December.
But if you don't need more information, then you can vote that motion down
Right.
if you want to finish it tonight.
Right. So,
Well, if you want to take if you want to take the last vote, which I guess was, what I was saying is that once you take the last vote, the vote either to grant or deny the variance, then you have to issue a written decision within 7 days. And certainly, I can do that, over the next 7 days. You would have to probably meet on Tuesday night because Monday's
You're trying to make a motion
a
to
holiday.
reconsider the first question.
yes,
That was my motion.
She was.
So I think you'd have to withdraw the motion to continue, and then you can make a motion to reconsider the first.
I make a motion, we withdraw the question and
No, withdraw the continuance.
withdraw the continuance right now and
Okay.
vote in,
I apologize.
in,
Okay,
My
you can only
motion was to
reconsider once, okay?
reconsider one now.
And you can only reconsider once, okay? So
Right.
this is it. So
All
once
right, so
once you reconsider it.
You're withdrawing the motion to continue the meeting so that you can reconsider question
Number
number
one.
one.
Correct.
tonight.
Sorry about that.
Who seconds?
It has to be the same person, I think.
Okay.
Doesn't have
Now you gotta move over.
Vote on the motion to reconsider.
to. Say, what's your pleasure?
Now you're voting
So
on the motion.
you're voting whether you want to
All in favor
reconsider
for
that.
the motion to reconsider, question one.
Okay, so you've passed a motion to reconsider the first one. Is there a motion on the first criteria again?
Just to vote on it? I motion that we vote on the first criteria again.
So you move to either, your motion is that the applicant meets the first criteria or does not meet the first criteria.
Correct.
So which one is it?
Oh, that he meets it.
That's right.
Little Three Stooges, it's good.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion.
So I will say, I'm going to change my vote to go for it, but I am going to say that I'm going to advocate for extremely strict variance rules. Like that's, just to be clear, I was a little bit of misunderstanding when if we voted all this down and couldn't change. I am going to be in favor of a very small variance, but I just want to put that out there, but that's why I'm changing my answer because I think that we can make this work, but I'm nowhere near 25.
Okay.
I think I just want to throw that out there, and that's my personal concerns. So.
Okay.
Okay, so now that there's been a motion, a second, and a little bit of discussion, but I think before, since there was a 2-2 vote, which would have resulted in that motion not passing, I think I needed some guidance as to where the board is going with the rationale on this criteria in terms of, was it
A better understanding of the law?
No, a better understanding of what you're thinking the reasonable return and
Right.
the lack of
Right.
practical use of the property is.
I think due to the steepness of the property, due to the fact that the pavement portion is limiting his own use, again, we did go back to, I was trying to find what I had for notes.
Reasonable use of the property.
Reasonable use, the steepness and the other items. But I think part of that for me was the fact that he was already over 20% before he came here today. And I don't believe that was his fault.
Yeah, so that's a different criteria that wasn't the result of an action taken, but what you need to answer on this first one is whether the property can yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. And what the courts have said on that is that the standard for measuring reasonable return is, quote, whether strict compliance with the terms of the ordinance would result in the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land. And again, that's the lot as a whole, not the portion that's just going to be used by the potential garage. So on that question, that's where I need you guys to hone in on is what's the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land without the variance, in your view? And that's really what I need.
I mean, realistically, if you know, hedge notes really hard right now because I see his point and I really feel for him, but at the same point, the law is pretty clear that he's still going to use the house and he's still going to do all this stuff. It's really kind of.
It also goes back to the garage adds a value to the property.
Right.
We can't deny that. It also adds value to.
Which I don't think that's why he's doing it.
No, but it adds the fact that he's going to have equipment that's going to be contained in there. It won't be sitting in the field leaching out to the lake.
But that's loss of property, not loss of.
Well, it's loss of use of his property. And the other part about it is he can't use the other part of the property. He can't take and put a picnic pavilion where that driveway is.
But that's
his property at the end of the day.
But he could put a carport at the bottom of the driveway. We're talking paved, and that's not.
No, that's still roof area.
I'm sorry?
It's still a roof area, it counts.
Yeah.
But it's already paved, so it counts anyway. It's already counts. It's already paved. It's not.
Correct.
You're not making more hardscape.
You're blocking.
So you could go through and put a carport.
You're blocking.
To do most of what you're talking.
Technically, you're blocking the right of way.
You can put a carport up on the top part. I mean, there's all kinds of other alternative ways to produce that.
And it goes back to quality of life. You know, it makes your
But
life
that's not the
easier.
That's not what the question is or what the law is.
It feeds into it. The attorney can tell you that. It's all feeds in together.
I will say that quality of life is not part of the question of whether there's a reasonable return on the property. It could potentially play into other standards in terms of essential character of the locality or something like that. But when you're talking about reasonable return, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the question is whether it would result in the practical loss of substantial beneficial use of the land if he does not get a variance tonight.
And the other part that just keys in, I heard it again, is you just remember that he could do this another way. Unfortunately, it's going to screw up the neighbor, or it's going to screw up a different piece of his land, or he's going to have to redo something else. But there is a way to still stay under the 22% he's under right now and still get a garage and other things. It may not be the biggest garage, or it may not be the driveways may not all work anymore, but there's ways to physically do it.
He's still going to, even if he put a single car garage in there, reduced his footprint to nothing, he'd still need a variance.
No.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yes.
Because
he would. He'd still need
because you
it.
still have all that land down there that you can reclaim, or you can grass or whatever else, and there's still the sheds that could come out, there's still the other shed that's going to be gone, there's all that other stuff.
Yeah, but he's still going to, the sheds, he's going to have to go buy a new shed because he's going to have to, still have storage for his lawnmower, or tractor, or for whatever he's using to cut, take care of the property.
So I think this is why we have the motion to reconsider, because it's just too much.
Can we just motion to continue from
Well-
here, or do we have to answer this?
Well, at this point, you've moved to reconsider, and now you're in the motion to either to vote this up or down. You can't reconsider an item more than once. So, yeah, I think you, at this point, have to move, move the question and have a vote on the first criteria, which you've moved to reconsider.
You clearly can't probably back around. I just can't, after you keep reading the law, and I'm a law guy, it's just, it doesn't make any sense.
Sometimes the way laws are written, they're not interpreted by people.
Well, that's exactly.
And you have.
They're written and interpreted by
Well,
people.
listen
I
to this,
disagree with that.
when I first started doing this, they had a thing on there on this reasonable usage thing that said, if anything you want to do on a property, you could get rejected from it. Basically, I'm trying to think of how they worded it. If you wanted to improve.
Well, like, when Sean was the chairperson, if I may speak.
Yes, please.
When Sean was the chairperson, they used to always say that if you could haul a canoe across a piece of land, you got reasonable return. That's not reasonable return, that's minimal return. So what you're looking at is reasonable return, not maximum, not minimum, just reasonable return.
It seems like there's more than one way to get this done.
And even in the DEP letter, the case that they quoted was for 2 dwellings, it wasn't for the same person using the same property. Their case didn't even go to this.
I'll say this, if I may. No matter how you vote, you vote it down, he can bring you back another set of plans. You guys can vote to eliminate the fees if you desire. I'm telling you, it cost the towns put a bunch of money here today because the fees that you collected from this fellow, we aren't going to get back. It cost the taxpayers. But you can deny or waive the fees to hear this case again if he wants to bring you back another set of plans that he can meet more of these criterias that you're requesting. But you're just going back and forth at this point. You need to call for a vote and move the question.
The wise old man has spoken. Not calling you old, I still love you.
Hey, wait a minute, he's not that much older than me.
Yeah, I think you want to have, I think you've had your discussion on the motion, and now I think it would be appropriate to vote the question.
Yeah, you're gonna
Reread the question.
I think the motion was to find that the applicant has met the first criteria that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless variance is granted, and that was seconded. And call for a vote on that.
Yeah, all in favor? Same question.
All opposed?
I motion-
Say all opposed. Say all opposed. Say all opposed.
All opposed.
Okay, so it's 2-2.
I motion that the applicant can come back with, resubmit without any fees.
Good. We haven't even finished this
So we have
appeal
to
yet,
finish-
so.
Now we have to go through this.
We have to go through the last question, so we have to, the motion is to grant or deny. So according to the structure, if you don't meet one of the criteria, the applicant or appeal is denied. So we have to make a motion that
Accept the finding.
that we are denying based on those criteria not being met.
Okay, so the motion is
Is that your
to,
motion?
so your motion was to deny the
that's-
application for a variance.
For a variance based on not meeting all 4 criteria.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who seconded that?
All in favor?
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion that the applicant can resubmit a new plan with no fees.
Is there-
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye. All in favor?
Look at the guy over here, he's doing it, he's telling you to do it.
It's his first day.
I don't know if you do that or not, but,
Mark,
so I will prepare the written decision now that, that the board has voted on the ultimate decision, and get that to you within 7 days, as the statute requires. Okay.
will that be a new conference?
What's that?
Will that then be a new appeals conference? So do I need to prepare a new application?
I think his question is, today they decided that he can't go above 20%, is what they
Right.
decided.
The board tonight denied the application that you submitted for a variance request. So, I'm not sure what the ordinance says about reapplying, but it sounds like what the board has voted tonight is to waive the fees on a future application. I'm not entirely sure that the board has the authority to do that, but I will check on that and do some research on that. And I know Mike is concerned about his budget, but the board has done what it needs to do tonight, which is to rule on the application that was before it. I will prepare a written decision based on that, the rationale that I heard, and get that to you within 7 days.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.